Pirate God Level Cartoonist, Chapter 81 100. Chapter 81 Sword Storm, 2 quarters. When Tiger finished shouting, his face was unprecedentedly tired. I'll go back first, Jinbei, and I'll leave the treatment for Kurla to you. Got it, boss. Jinbei nodded. When Tiger returned to the house and closed the door, he collapsed to the ground. Taking out the Dream magazine in his arms, Tiger's eyes were full of relief. That way, the Dream Pirates wouldn't reveal his secrets to the public. Read the manga again. Watch Fisher Tiger climb the Red Soil continent, rescue Mary Joa's slaves, and become a hero. Watching the scene where humans refused to give blood to Fisher Tiger, resulting in Fisher Tiger's death, Tiger's eyes were full of puzzled meaning. Why even the Dream Brigade has to help him hide the truth? What the hell is the Dream Team going to do? East China Sea, Kokoja Village. In the quiet and peaceful village, a heavyweight guest came today. A majestic naval warship was moored on the pier of the village. The villagers 27 who came to hear the news watched an enchanting naval officer with a pink-haired shawl stepped off the boat and walked towards the outskirts of the village. It's so beautiful. If I could marry such a beautiful wife in my life, it would be worth dying. Some villagers looked at the direction where the woman was leaving. Stop dreaming, take a good look at other people's clothes. They are naval officers, are you able to climb high? The villagers next to them slammed mercilessly. What happened to the officer? Burma was not an officer before. Hey, did you say that the Navy came to find Belmer? Someone suddenly said. At this time, the pink-haired officer had walked into Belmer's home. After half a day, the pink-haired officer left Belmer's house and left by boat. At the door of the orangery, Belmo clutched the documents in his hand and the Navy phone bug, and sighed in self-deprecation. It's so embarrassing to be taken care of by the younger generation. Hey, Bellmeyer, is what she just said true? The Navy will buy all the oranges from the orangery in the future. Then, will I buy whatever book I want in the future? Belmer's sleeve asked excitedly. Yeah, in the future, Nami can buy whatever book she wants. Belmo gently stroked Nami's hair. Excellent. Belmo, can this phone bug really call the Navy? Then when I'm caught stealing something in the future, can the Navy come to help me? Nuao Chigao on the other side shook Belmer's hand excitedly. Belmo. Nami, Nokiko, you are so smart. Boom, boom. He severely hammered the heads of the two little girls, looking at the two who were grinning but did not repent. Belmer was smoking a cigarette, his face was aching. You two also pay attention to me. Half a month later, night. City of Seven Waters. In the courtyard of Roha's villa, Roha held the village chief and kept walking in the courtyard. Artoria sat aside, holding a plate of dessert, eating happily, and from time to time she opened her mouth to point out Roha's mistakes in swinging his sword. A full quarter of an hour passed, and Roha stopped just now. After a short rest, he transformed into Accelerator and practiced with his sword again. This time his sword swing was obviously much slower than before, but every move and every style was more concise and effective than before. Another quarter of an hour has passed, and Roha will practice the sword on his own again. This time his movements are even sharper. This is also the shortcut that Roha has recently figured out. The basic swordsmanship was mastered through the body, and Artoria pointed out the shortcomings. Finally, he transformed into Accelerator. Through Accelerator's powerful computing power, he thought about the problem of swordsmanship practice, and then used vector operations to modify the direction of muscle movement, so as to achieve the purpose of improving swordsmanship and modifying muscle memory. This kind of cultivation method can be called 1,000 miles in a day. In just half a month, Roha was able to defeat several well-known swordsmen without relying on any ability and only relying on swordsmanship. Of course, Janao's level is not something he can beat now. Scoff. After another sword cut off a huge tree with a thick waist, Roha couldn't help sighing. Sure enough, swordsmanship is not something that can be achieved quickly. Even if his cultivation speed is astonishing, he has not shown signs of sword chi so far. Fortunately, practicing swordsmanship has increased his strength a lot. Roha put Muramasa back in the sheath and transformed into Accelerator. Lift your foot and kick the broken trunk into the sky. The next moment, Roha faced the tree trunk in the sky, and stroked his index finger lightly in the air. Immediately, a huge sword chi shot up into the sky, tearing apart the wind and slashing the tree trunk into two ends. But this is not over yet. When the first sword energy just flew out, Roha's index finger swiped in the air again. An instant, the second sword chi appeared, followed by the third and fourth. In the end, a hurricane blew up around Roha out of thin air, and the strong wind pressure oppressed the entire courtyard, and one after another dense sword chi emerged in front of Roha and slashed into the air. The atmosphere is whining. The air is shaking. Countless sword chi overlapped, rising from the ground like a giant dragon, swallowing the tree trunk in the air in one bite. In the sky, a terrifying sound of friction sounded, like a prehistoric beast swallowing the air. After a few seconds, the canopy in mid-air had all disappeared, and turned into 933 countless sawdust, which disappeared with the wind. And Roha also withdrew his hand. His face was indifferent. Gyubo was not surprised, as if the sword chi that destroyed the world before was not emitted by him. It only took a few seconds from when he kicked the tree trunk and cut it into pieces. If there is an ordinary person standing here, it is estimated that Roha will be able to see Roha kicking the tree trunk, and then will be suffocated by the strong wind pressure until Roha stops. Seeing such a terrifying effect, there was no sign of excitement on Roha's face. The attack power is still not enough. Sure enough, I still have to learn the real sword energy. Roha murmured in a low voice. Sword chi, just now was similar to that of the swordsman, it was actually very different. The sword chi used by the sword lords is the sword lord urging the chi energy in the body to make out-of-body attacks, and the damage is amazing. And Roha's sword chi is just a fake sword chi generated by his special structure of using vector manipulation to control wind and air and forcibly simulate the sword chi. Although the formidable power of the fake sword chi far exceeds the damage caused by him hitting air balls or throwing stones. But if compared with the real sword chi, the counterfeit sword chi is far inferior to the real sword chi in terms of attack power and range, but the advantage is that the shot speed is fast, there is no need to charge up, and there are many. Who is stronger or weaker can only be known after Roha has fought with a real swordsman. Chapter 82 Dragon Ball World Sweepstakes. Under the dark night, Roha stood alone in the courtyard with his hands on his back. As for Artoria, because Roha had just practiced the wind pressure of sword chi, she couldn't eat properly and returned to the house. At this moment, a shadow suddenly appeared behind Roha. Black Shadow knelt down on one knee, looking at Roha's back with awe and excitement. Yuanzo, what's the matter? Roha turned around slowly, staring at the new subordinate indifferently. Ghost warrior, Genzo, a deserted samurai from the country of Wano. Because of the practice of killing swordsmanship, he took ruthless shots. Beheaded 2 swordsmen and 17 swordsmen in the Battle of Wano country. He was wanted by Wano country and kept his name invisible for many years until Dugu swordsmanship appeared. Defeat with fake sword chi and accepted as a subordinate. There are many people like Genzo, and there are many Roha subordinates. Without exception, these people are all ruthless and blood-stained. Some of them are like Genzo, who came to the door without a head and no brain, and more are because of the name of the Dimensional Brigade. There are only a very few people. It is Roha who came to the door through the Dark World Intelligence and forcibly subdued. These people are collectively called Shadow, which means the shadow of Roha. They are prefixed with Tien, Di, Zan, and Huang, and they are Zi, Cho, Yin, Mao, Chen, Si, Wu, Wei, Shen, Yu, Shu, Hai. The 12 earthly branches are suffixed, forming a code name, specially dealing with some secret affairs for Roha. It's just a pity for Roha that although there are 48 people, there are only more than 20 people who meet the conditions, and the rest are some low-strength non-staff. The days of getting together are far away. Seen by Roha's gaze, Genzo, who was at the top of the Xuanzi list, code-named Xuanzi, trembled, lowered his head hastily, and looked directly at the ground. Sir, the statistics of the sword training objects you ordered to collect have been completed. In addition, some of the information that the adults specially instructed before have also been collected. Saying that, Genzo took out a document from his arms. Without raising his head, his hands were raised, and he held it up in front of Roha. After taking the document and flipping through it a few times, Roha suddenly asked, "Where are Masaka Makoto and the others?" "Master Wei, he is still wandering in the East China Sea, and the 4 Huang Bu are following each other alternately. Let them lead a few waves of pirates over. They don't have to be too strong. But they must be bloodthirsty." "Yes," Genzo agreed immediately without hesitation. As early as the day he joined, Genzo understood a truth. The leader's order is absolute, no doubt. "You can go," Roha explained lightly and walked into the house with the information. Behind him, Genzo knelt on the ground without moving, until Roha walked into the house and closed the door, then slowly stood up and touched his chest subconsciously. There are several criss-cross scars there. It was the day when he broke into the villa and was slashed by Roha with sword energy eye. Recalling the look in Roha's side at that day, asking him if he wanted to surrender or die, Genzo suddenly shuddered, shook his head, and hurriedly left the yard. Watching Genzo climb over the wall and disappear into the darkness, Roha withdrew his gaze. I don't know when it started, an indifferent side appeared on Roha's body. For friends and relatives, he is still a gentle and funny big boy, but for these guys who kill without blinking, Roha knows that only iron blood can make them surrender. As for the order to lead the pirates to attack Masaka Makoto, it was just that Roha wanted the 2 of them to gain experience, lest one day they encounter a strong enemy and die early. Sitting back on the sofa, Roha read the information quietly. The content of the information is very messy, including the movements of the various naval ministries, the 4 emperor pirates, the great swordsmen who have recently become famous, and even the information about Tina's arrival at Kokoja village. Several of them were highlighted. The Sun Pirates arrived at Forchart Island, but were intercepted by the Navy. The Sun Pirates who had paid in advance successfully broke through the siege. After sending the little girl Kurla home, they fled in a hurry. Tezzolo successfully attacked and killed a mafia leader in the West Sea and took away the SSR Whitebeard. It is estimated that he has at least 7 SSRs in his hand, and because of this, he has been continuously pursued by several forces. Time passed little by little, and in the blink of an eye, it was already 12 o'clock, and it was the new month. The sound of the system sounded. Open black lens bracket followers statistics start. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket follower value statistics completed. Close black lens bracket. The host has gained a total of 40.13 million fan points this month, according to the proportion of experience. Watching the settlement of the system, Roha had some expectations in his heart. Because this time the settlement is completed, his cartoonist level will be raised to the 3rd level. Cartoonist level. Level 3 2.6 million 10 million. Fan value. 11.2 million. 1 skill point will be awarded. Close black lens bracket. Roha. Waiting for a while, without seeing the system prompt, Roha finally couldn't help asking, "This is gone. No new features. Open black lens bracket no. Close black lens bracket. Tisk, I'm looking forward to it." Roha glanced at his mouth, a little disappointed. Open the skill tree, the 3rd row has been opened. Absolute calmness. After turning it on, nothing can disturb the host's spirit, so you can paint with peace of mind. Fragment enhancement. Fragment duration increased to 3 minutes. Looking at the 2 newly appeared skills, Roha did not hesitate and chose Shard Enhancement. Although, the first skill, Absolute Calm, is very similar to the Mechanized Mind in D&D Magic, it will not be affected by negative emotions such as fear and fright. Like Perona's negative ghost, it will not affect him. Any effect, possessing this ability, greatly improves the combat ability. But fragmentation is obviously more important. Sometimes, 3 minutes is enough to decide the outcome of the battle. After selecting the skills, Roja opened the quest panel again and received the hidden quest profit. No, this is a spoiler. Reward. As early as a few days ago, the One Piece manga was serialized to the 10th volume, and the task of Luffy vs. Eren was naturally completed. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host. Get a chance to choose a designated comic once. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host. Get 5 million followers. Close black lens bracket. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host. Get a designated comic world premium draw once. Close black lens bracket. The rewards of the system instantly refresh the screen. Roja rubbed his hands a little excitedly. The raffle is about to start. But before that, he consumed the opportunity to specify the comic and chose Chop. Crimson Eyes. Unlike Doflamingo, who has been dawdling and trying to insert spies into the magazine, the Revolutionary Army has been quietly promoting Dream magazine. Reasonable, Roja should also fulfill his promise. After selecting the comics, Roja opened the lottery page to start the advanced lottery. As for which world, he had already thought about it. Must be Dragon Ball. Super Saiyan Bloodline, Kaiwang Fist, Vitality Bomb, Turtle Qigong, Qigong Cannon. Anyone is good, come to my arms. Looking at the scrolling lottery interface, Roja recited a few times. Finally, the lottery results came out. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host. Acquired skill, teleportation, Jebit. Close black lens bracket. Chapter 83. Infiltrate the Beast Pirates, 4 quarters. Looking at the reward floating in front of him, Roja twitched the corners of his mouth. Is it good or bad? There are 2 types of teleportation in Dragon Ball, one of which is the teleportation of the protagonist Sun Wukong. As long as he can perceive the chi of the other party, Sun Wukong can reach anyone. Combined with the perception ability of Sun Wukong that covers the planet, it is extremely abnormal. And the other one is obtained by Roja. Jebit's teleportation does not need to perceive chi, but it can only be transmitted to the specified range. There is a certain error. Although not as accurate as Sun Wukong, it is still suitable for Roja. I want a damage skill. Roja was a little speechless. What did he do with this running skill? He was transformed into Accelerator, with the ability to fly at supersonic speeds. He couldn't go anywhere he wanted. What a pit. After receiving the skill, Roja sighed and stood up from the sofa. Now that you have drawn it, there is nothing you can do, so let's study it carefully. Looking out the window, looking at the distant night sky, Roja activated teleportation. The next moment, Roja's figure instantly disappeared in place of 310, and when it reappeared, it was already at an altitude of 1,000 meters away from the villa. Falling rapidly in the air, Roja looked around. This time he teleported a full 10,000 meters away. After teleporting several times, Roja sat on a reef and thought silently. The farther the distance, the longer the launch time, the greater the physical exertion, and the greater the margin of error. The distance of about 500 meters, the error and the starting time are basically negligible. Will it get stuck in the stone? Roja glanced at the reef in the distance, opened the stigmata, and the next moment, he appeared next to another smaller reef. There were several flashes in succession, and I saw Roja's figure appearing and disappearing near the reef beach. After a few times, Roja stopped. Standing on the spot and thinking for a while, he picked up a piece of reef and smashed it, picked up the largest piece and threw it high into the distance. The next moment, Roja appeared beside the flying boulder. Automatically avoid obstacles, not bad. Looking at the boulder that fell into the sea, Roja nodded with satisfaction. If even moving obstacles will be automatically avoided, then in the future, in the face of tricks such as Bachi Chonguyu, he can completely deal with injuries. After testing some ability effects again, Roha's figure flashed and appeared above the villa. After a while, Roha returned to the room. Dao. After thinking about it, he took out a huge map from the storage space, sat there and looked at it. This map is not only huge, but there are also densely packed boys on the map. The locations of the major pirate groups, the garrisons of the navy in various places, and the places where some powerful pirate groups last appeared are marked in great detail. It is extremely precise. This was bought by Shadow for Roha at a high price in the Dark World, and was supplemented by the Intelligence Department Xuanbu in Shadow and finally sent to Roha. One a day, continuously. Expanding the map, flipping through the information just sent by Xuanbu, Roha began to look for the target. Now that you have acquired the skills, what if you don't make good use of them? It didn't take long for him to find the information he wanted. Since 3 months ago, explosions have often been heard from the Beast Pirates station. Close black lens bracket. Starting from the same period, every half-month, a cargo ship arrives at the Beast Pirates station. According to the investigation, the person behind the cargo ship is a famous slave trader in the Dark World. Close black lens bracket. You are the one. Look what the hell you are doing. Roha played the intelligence book and couldn't help showing a smile on his face. Those who knew him knew that this was the smile before Roha was about to make a mess. After confirming the location on the map, Roha put on a black suit and covered his face with a cloth, and then Roha activated his skills. 1, 2, 3, Roha muttered to himself. Swish. Roha's figure disappeared in the room, and when he opened his eyes again, he had already appeared in a metal corridor. At this distance, the activation time is 3 seconds. The number of times I can use this physical strength consumption. About 23 times. Roha frowned slightly, the consumption of teleportation was a bit too much. For this ultra-long distance teleportation, Roha took 3 seconds to prepare, and the physical exertion was also very large. According to this, the idea of catching the enemy and throwing it into space in the original plan was unrealistic. All because of lack of strength. Roha clenched his fists, and the desire for power grew stronger in his heart. Cultivation will be discussed later, let's see where this place is. Roha looked around. He is now in a fully metallized corridor, the badge of the Beast Pirates can be seen on the wall, and there are metal gates one after another on both sides of the corridor. Although the whole corridor exudes an aura of, a big secret is hidden here, Roha did not see any guards or surveillance phone bugs or the like. It is estimated that it is a defensive method that is tight on the outside and loose on the inside. After taking a few steps, Roha noticed that above each door, there was a metal sign indicating the function of the room. Raising room, experimental product warehouse, medicine warehouse, testing room. Roha looked at the iron doors one by one, and finally came to the end of the corridor. In front of him was a huge metal door that was 20 meters high. There is no sign on the door, but anyone can see the importance here. Roha pushed tentatively, the door only moved slightly, and then returned to the original place. During the pushing process, Roha could obviously feel the force of a machine spring. It seemed that the door was not locked, but the machine spring was opened by some kind of mechanism. To be honest, this kind of door made of metal is the same with or without a lock. The average person can't open it at all, but the strong ones smash the door directly. After hesitating for a while, in order not to disturb the guards, Roha launched teleportation again. The next moment, he crossed the gate and came to a laboratory full of science fiction. The laboratory occupies a huge area, the size of a football field, and is equipped with petri dishes, test benches, and experimental machinery. Looking at the experimental specimens of beasts or humans in the huge glass tank, Roha couldn't help raising his eyebrows. Is this researching artificial devil fruits, or study human modification? Going to a test bench, messy paperwork reports spread all over the table. Picking up a document, Roha looked at it. Chapter 84 Mass Production Capable Person Program. After reading for a while, Roja put down the document, picked up the next one and read it again. After reading several documents in succession, Roja's brows unknowingly tightened. Even if he doesn't know much about scientific research, he can see that the beast pirates are not researching artificial devil fruits, but something like human body modification. Among them, words such as superpower and mass-producing weak devil fruit ability appear in the document, which are particularly dazzling. The above concept is very similar to his setting concept in the magical forbidden book catalog. Crack the secrets in the devil fruit, and transfer the genes of the devil fruit into ordinary people, so as to create a large number of capable people. Unexpectedly, someone actually studied according to this idea. Gotta find this guy. Catch him. If you can't catch him, kill him. If he really succeeds in his research, the beast pirates who have always been hostile to the Dimensional Brigade will surely become Roja's confidant. The killing intent in his heart suddenly rose, and Roja's eyes were icy cold. After strolling around the laboratory again, Roja was a little bored and planned to leave. As for the idea of destroying the laboratory, he rejected it as soon as it appeared. Destroying the laboratory and not killing the person who led the experiment is just a way to treat the symptoms rather than the root cause. It is better to come back in the future to completely eliminate future troubles. Just as Roja was about to leave, the sound of mechanical rotation suddenly came from the steel gate. The figure flashed. Roja hid behind a huge machine, stuck his head out and looked at the door. The huge steel gate slowly rose, and two figures, one big and one small, came from the door. The tall figure walking in front of him, with a burly stature, taut muscles, and huge ivory on both sides, was Jack. Walking behind was an old-looking middle-aged man, but when Roja saw the other's appearance, his pupils could not help shrinking. Patio Yashong. He actually crossed over. Tianjing Yashong, a high-end scientific researcher in the Magical Forbidden Books catalog, was the research director of the Mass Production Ability Person Project, and later joined the research team of the Absolute Ability Person Evolution Project. Seeing this person, Roja also understands why the experimental progress of the beast pirates is so fast. It turns out that Tianjing Yashong is helping them. Kill him. As soon as this thought arose, it was ruthlessly smothered by Roja. Tianjing Yashong's scientific research ability is too precious. Compared with Bergapunk, who claims to be leading the world for 500 years, Tianjing Yashong is the real leader of the world for hundreds of years. And LT. Must catch him. Tianjing, the adults want to know how your test progress is. When will mass production be implemented? Jack asked as he walked. The speed of progress is okay, but the experimental equipment is still a little short. If there are better experimental equipment, the research speed can be accelerated. Tianjing Yashong followed Jack with some flinch. Understood, I will tell the adults. Jack nodded coldly, occasionally looking back at Yashong Tianjing with disgust in his eyes. It is because of this weak man that he can't go out to sea. It is a shame to protect him day and night. When did he degenerate Jack down to the point of being a bodyguard? Didn't he just fail once? Thinking of this, Jack touched his face subconsciously, and a disgusting sense of ruggedness came from his hands. That was the shame of his life. Even his self-healing ability can't completely heal the scars of ultra-high temperature burns. What makes Jack even more mad is the scars all over his body. Make him a scalded monster. Accelerator, I'm going to kill you sooner or later. Jack's face burst with blue veins and his eyes were red. At this moment, Yashong Tianjing, who was walking to the test bench, suddenly exclaimed. What's wrong? Jack was a little impatient. These documents, Tianjing Yashong said hesitantly, it seems that someone has moved. Did you remember it wrong? Jack frowned in disbelief. This research institute is one of the most secret places of the beast pirates. It is located in a huge natural cave hundreds of meters underground. The walls are reinforced with steel. There are guards patrolling the outside 24 hours a day. There are countless surveillance calls, and red-eyed owls collected at great expense. And in this airtight research institute, this laboratory is even more secret. In order to protect the secrets of the experiment, there was not even a single camera installed outside the laboratory, but 6 giant metal gates made of steel and fusion, in order to prevent the monitoring personnel from peeping at the experiment through monitoring. In the face of this kind of perverted defense, even Jack himself did not have the confidence to break through the defense and come to this laboratory. Now, Tianjin Yashang actually said that someone sneaked in here. Jack not only didn't believe it, he even wanted to laugh. This man is really useless except for research. I'm definitely not mistaken. Tianjin Yashang was a little anxious, really. Tianjin Yashang's pupils shrank suddenly, and a figure suddenly appeared behind Jack in his sight. Boom! Before Jack could react, he was hit by a whip and slammed into the wall. After kicking Jack, Roha kept walking, grabbed Yashang Tianjin, and launched teleportation. At the moment when the two disappeared, Jack just got up from the ground. Looking at Yashang Tianjin disappeared, Jack was stunned. There really is someone. Tianjin Yashang was actually kidnapped in front of him. Thinking of Kaido's attention to Tianjin Yashang, and the Beast Pirate's investment in Tianjin Yashang's experiment during this time, Jack's eyes instantly turned red. Lord Kaido must be notified as soon as possible. Invite everyone to get Tianjin Yashang back. Standing up, Jack rumbled and ran out. As Jack ran out, he ruled the control room to open the door, but even so, it took him nearly 5 minutes to pass through the 6 gates, which was why he crawled under the door just after it opened. What's so special? These broken doors are too stupid. Next time, I must let the guys who built the research institute improve it. Jack angrily kicked the door, instructed the console to close the door, and hurried to the distance. After a while, a harsh alarm sounded from the entire station. No one noticed that just a few minutes after Jack left, 2 figures reappeared in the institute. Chapter 85 Furious Kaido. Roha carried Tianjin Yashang and appeared in a room full of abandoned machinery. Looking at the familiar room, Tianjin Yashang was a little confused. Why did he come back? Before he could react, Roha grabbed his neck again. Where is the laboratory? Ah, Tianjin Yashang was stunned when asked. I ask you, where is the laboratory? Roha frowned, a little impatient. Time is running out now. Kaido doesn't know when he will come back. If he doesn't hurry up, he will be in trouble. He has no desire to go to war with the beast pirates. Go out from here, turn left and go straight, and then. Tianjin Yashang tried to recall the route. Snapped. Roha slapped the back of Tianjin Axiong's head. I asked you in that direction. How far from here, upper or lower? Nima, you didn't say anything. Tianjin Yashang clutched the swollen back of his head and grinned, but did not dare to look at Roha. There is no way. The situation is stronger than people. On the 6th day of coming to this world, he was discovered by the beast pirates. Tianjin Yashang, who was arrested for research, understood a truth. In this world, don't be reasonable. Whoever has the bigger fist is justified. A scientific researcher like him who is helpless can only survive if he is obedient. After trying to identify it, Yashang Tianjin pointed to the front right. There, 100 meters. Got it. Roha grabbed Yashang Tianjin, and the next moment the two of them appeared in the laboratory. Looking at the dazzling array of experimental equipment and various precious materials, Roha couldn't help snickering. There are so many ready-made things, I am really sorry for not taking them away. Find me a map here, and tell me which things are most valuable in the laboratory. Roha shook Tianjin Yashang next to him, a little impatient. Hearing Roha's order, Tianjin Yashang was stunned for a moment, then he reacted immediately, and hurriedly ran to the test bench to rummage. After a while, he ran over with a map of the institute. Looking at the map obtained from the research, Roha smiled excitedly after listening to Yashang Tianjin pointing out the valuable equipment. He snapped the map together and rubbed his hands together. Start. In the Villa of the Seven Waters, Monet and others were awakened by loud noises. When they came out, Roja happened to come back with a huge cultivation tank. Boom! The cultivation tank fell heavily on the ground, making a roar. Tilda. Tianjing Yashang, who had been waiting beside him, twitched his eyelids, and a pained look appeared on his face. For him as a researcher, these experimental equipment are simply life. Being treated so rudely by Roja, his heart was broken. However, even though he thought so, Tianjing Yashang didn't dare to say anything, so he could only rush up, check the integrity of the culture tank with distress, and make adjustments. Brother, what are you doing? Sugar rubbed her eyes, walked over, and hugged Roja's hand. Phew, Roja took a breath and planned to rest for a while. Continuous use of teleportation, but also carrying large items such as the cultivation tank, is a big burden for him. Sitting on a laboratory bench casually, picked up the sugar and put it on his lap, Roja briefly explained the matter to Monet and the others. Even Artoria couldn't help laughing when she heard that Roja planned to vacate the research institute of the Beast Pirates. Roja's trick is simply too good, not only abducting other researchers, but also planning to move the laboratory away, which can be called a desperate plan. Even Roja himself couldn't help laughing contentedly. You must know that this world is no better than the Earth. The craftsmanship level of this world is not high. It takes a month or even several months to make a high-precision experimental equipment. For these experimental equipment, the 100 Beasts pirates robbed several kingdoms one after another, and fought more than a dozen encounters with the navy before they were able to collect them. Now, these are all cheap, Roja. Okay, it's time to continue. Roja felt that he had almost rested, patted his butt and stood up. Monet gently arranged the collar for Roja. Pay attention to safety, I will arrange for someone to clear a warehouse and come out. Arturia, I am with Monet. Sugar, brother, I'll cheer you on. Saying that, Sugar clenched her little fist and gestured twice, showing her cuteness. Okay. Roja rubbed Sugar's head and disappeared in place. Yashang Tianjing on the side has been watching all this silently. He suddenly felt that if it was to help Roja, it might not be as difficult to accept as he imagined. At the very least, Roja won't kill him if he doesn't complete the research task like Kaido. This time the transport lasted a full night, during which Roja took several breaks in succession, and finally moved out most of the valuable things in the research institute. Looking at the experimental materials in a warehouse, Roja is satisfied, and there is a sense of pleasure in doing bad things. When Kaido returns to the research institute, won't he go crazy? In the early morning, Kaido, who hurried back to the station, heard that Tianjing Yashang was kidnapped. After all the people searched for the news that they couldn't find all night, they kicked Jack into the wall with one kick. Trash. Can't even look at a person. Kaido was furious. He placed too much hope on Tianjing Yashang, but now he has been kidnapped. Everyone surrounds the research institute. The other party is probably still hiding in the research institute. Cough cough. Yes. Jack vomited a mouthful of blood and quickly surrounded the institute with people. Half an hour later, Kaido violently kicked open the door of the research institute and walked in aggressively. Behind him, the elites of the Beast Pirates filed in and frantically searched. When passing through a hall, Kaido was stunned for a moment. Where's the machinery here? Kaido asked with a bad premonition in his heart. Mechanical. Jack walked out from behind Kaido in confusion, and when he saw the empty hall, his pupils shrank suddenly. When he left, all kinds of machinery were still filling the entire hall. Why are they gone now? Seeing Jack's expression, Kaido's face flashed with anger, and he hurried to the depths of the research institute. The biological laboratory. There is only one place of culture fluid left. Drug warehouse. Just a few empty boxes fell to the ground. Breeding room. Only a few weak beasts were left looking for food on the ground. Damn. Squeezing a beast to death, Kaido slammed into the deepest laboratory. Behind him, Jack's face was gloomy, and he followed Kaido vainly. Chapter 86 Cut the Red Eyes. Boom, boom, boom. After breaking through 6 metal gates in a row, when Kaido rushed into the laboratory, even he couldn't help being stunned. There was a laboratory the size of a football field. At this time, it was in a dilapidated state. Everything that could be moved had disappeared, and the equipment that could not move was completely scrapped as if it had been kneaded by a giant. Jack! Kaido roared in a low voice. The blue veins on his face were exposed, and the mountain-like coercion swept the world. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Something must have gone wrong. How could it be gone overnight? Jack walked around the laboratory frantically, looking at the empty laboratory with a look of despair on his face. He was the one who was responsible for protecting Tianjin Yasheng. It was also him who dispatched the guards of the research institute to search. It was also him who couldn't find anyone. All the blame was on him. Jack's heart gradually sank to the bottom, and now, he is a little afraid to look back. However, just because he doesn't look back doesn't mean Kaido won't come. Boom. Kaido's fist in rage slammed into Jack's back. Boom. 27. Jack was kicked out like a baseball, hitting the metal gate and smashing it deep. Kai didn't lose his anger, and rushed up to face Jack with a slamming hammer, and finally grabbed Jack by the neck and threw him into the corner ruthlessly. Find Tianjin Yasheng, otherwise, you don't have to come back. Kaido left the sentence coldly, turned and walked out. Jack's successive mistakes made Kaido very disappointed in him. If Jack is in the basket again, he doesn't mind supporting a drought again. After Kaido left, Jack vomited blood and barely stood up against the wall. Roughly refusing the help of his subordinates, Jack looked in the direction Kaido was leaving, his face frantic, and there was a hint of resentment in the depths of his eyes. At this time, in the Villa of the Seven Waters, Roha frowned, looking at the huge map in front of him while flipping through some materials from time to time. The experimental equipment has been obtained, and Yasheng Tianjin does not seem to be malicious, and is temporarily arranged by Roha to an abandoned shipyard to continue the research on those who can produce mass production. Outside the shipyard, there are people from Shadow who take care of it 24 hours a day, so there is no need to worry about safety. The experimental materials collected by the beast pirates are enough for a long period of research. But it's not a long-term solution. But, where should I go to build a research institute? Master, it's time to eat. P_Sanji, who had been busy with breakfast in the living room, came over asked Roha to eat. I see, I'll go right now. With a casual glance at Sanji, Roha suddenly froze for a moment, and a vague idea appeared in his mind. Sanji Derma 66. Clone. Sanji, do you want to be the head of the house? Roha said suddenly. Ah, master, what did you say? Sanji turned around, puzzled. Nothing. Roha shook his head, it was too early to plan. After eating, Roha returned to his room and prepared to draw comics. One Piece has finished serializing 10 volumes. For the time being, he does not plan to continue to update it. Now he has to complete the manuscript of Crimson Eye. Roha couldn't help laughing after going through the manga of the Crimson Pupil in his mind. Although the ending in the manga is not as tragic as in the animation, there are also many characters who died. I don't know what effect the Revolutionary Army will see. As soon as the new issue of Dream magazine was released, Roha notified the Revolutionary Army. The Revolutionary Army who got the news immediately bought back the new issue of Dream magazine and sent it to Dorag. Just like people will gradually corrode, the country will one day be destroyed. Even the imperial capital that has prospered for thousands of years is now just a corrupt purgatory on earth. The spooky sprite in human skin is arrogant and domineering. In the darkness, I am waiting for all the members, called the professional killer group, Night Raid. Night Raid, Night Raid. A very imposing beginning. Drago smiled with satisfaction while admiring the cover of the new issue of Dream magazine. Dream magazine did it more thoroughly than he imagined. Originally, he thought that the Dimension Brigade would at most publish some side-scrolling comics, but he did not expect that he would dare to directly insinuate the world government. The country mirrors the world government, the imperial capital in the comics, and the increasingly corrupt rule of the world government, and that ghost is simply a replica of the dragon and the nobles. Just seeing the cover, Drago was very satisfied and looked forward to the next plot. Looking back, Tasmi, a country boy, came to the imperial capital with longing. He was first rejected by the army, and then defrauded of all the money by Leone. The description of his spiritual journey is very detailed. But what I liked most to Drago was that there were people around who saw that Leone was cheating Tasmi, but no one reminded him to describe the selfishness of human nature vividly. That's it, show the world's shadows to the world. Let everyone know that this world is gradually decaying, and only change can bring new life. The comic continues, with hypocritical noble families and night raid organizations appearing one after another, until Tasmi saw his fellow villagers die tragically at the hands of the nobles. Tasmi killed the noble lady in anger and finally joined the night raid. Lager could not wait to applaud. This cartoon is simply the perfect work of propaganda revolution. If it is publicized, it will surely wake up the world. Nobles and Tianlong people will never be sympathetic to the people's stubbornness. One day, their morbid desire will come on people's heads and bring about extinction. Disaster. Boss, isn't this cartoon too much? A revolutionary army, who was also looking at the red eyes, pointed at the death of his fellow Tasmi, as if he could not accept such a dark scene. It's not too much at all. Bartholomew Shang, who rarely speaks, suddenly said, the nobles here will at least cover up, and the Tianlong people are simply blatant and their behavior is too much. Well, I thought so too. Indeed, I feel that I can add some more descriptions. If the torture process can be put on a few pages, I believe the effect will be better. Yes, Gao Shi must have never seen what Tianlong people do, or he can definitely draw better. Leader, do you want me to send the information about the atrocities of the Tianlong people to the Dimension Brigade and let him add it to the Dimension Brigade? Some intelligence personnel couldn't wait to give their opinions. Let's wait and see the reaction of the cartoon. Drago hesitated for a while, but did not agree. After reading the first chapter of Crimson Eyes again, Drago stood up and clapped his hands. Starting today, all revolutionary armies, all subordinate organizations of the revolutionary armies, will make every effort to publicize the cartoon of Scarlet Eyes. I want everyone in the world to see it. Understood. Chapter 88 Cartoon Against the Government. Great Root, New World. Don Quixote family. At this time, Doflamingo, who has become Shichibukai, burst into laughter while looking at the Dream magazine in his hand. When he saw that Tasmi joined the night attack at the end, he laughed even more arrogantly. Tan fu fu fu. It's funny, it's so funny. Doflamingo can see without thinking that the comics of the Dimensional Brigade are completely against the world government. And behind this comic, it is very likely that there is a shadow of the Revolutionary Army. Although I don't know how the Revolutionary Army took the line of the last Yuan Brigade, but when I thought that they might have some degree of cooperation, an excitement from the bottom of my heart welled up in Doflamingo's heart. Controlling the most influential newspaper in the world, with a combat power comparable to that of the 4 Emperor Pirates, if such a force falls to the Revolutionary Army. Doflamingo covered his forehead, leaned back, and laughed frantically again. This combination is simply too interesting. Even the world government will probably be too busy. Smiling, Doflamingo seemed to suddenly remember something, and the cold light in his eyes flashed away. What if, plus him who will rule the dark world in the future? The three unite. Doflamingo's face showed a look of anticipation. If they can really work together, the energy that bursts out is definitely not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2, but doubled. Any pirate group in the world will tremble in their shadow. Desire for their alms. Years later, even in the face of the world government, there will be a battle. The excitement on Doflamingo's face, who was thinking wildly, could not be suppressed. He seemed to have foreseen the destruction of the world government. The end of this disgusting world is coming. Holding his forehead and thinking for a while, Doflamingo called Diamante. "Young master, what's the matter?" Diamante respectfully stood in front of Doflamingo. "How many newspapers are in our hands now?" 22. Diamante replied without hesitation. "Understood, you sent someone to collect all the evidence about the evil deeds of the nobles and Tianlong people, keep them all, and let all the newspapers start publishing them when the time comes." "Yes. That's right," Doflamingo said suddenly. "What happened to Dressrosa?" "Everything is planned." Diamante smiled sinisterly. "Navy headquarters, Marshal's office." Sengoku put down the Dream magazine with a dignified expression, sighed deeply, and his face was full of exhaustion. "The work of the Marshal is far more difficult than that of the generals. Countless documents need to be corrected, countless orders need to be issued, and the lives of millions of navies are in his hands. Such pressure makes the warring states period dare not relax. Ever since he became a marshal, he has stayed up all night. Correcting documents has become a common occurrence, and over time, even he has a feeling that he can't hold it anymore." Actually, the work of the marshal was not that much, it was all because the current situation in the world was too chaotic, and various accidents happened every day. And the culprit behind all this is the Dimension Brigade. First came the One Piece comics, then the Dugu sword art, and now there is a sinister purpose, cutting the red eyes. Among them, One Piece, because of the early interruption and the inconvenient information flow in this world, most people just regard it as a new comic by Gao Shi, and only those forces with strong intelligence capabilities know the true meaning of it. The Dugu sword art, while attracting countless swordsmen, also added a lot of swordsmen to the navy in disguise, and at the same time made the activities of the pirates restrained a lot. But the Crimson Eye in front of him is different. This manga is about rebellion at all. It is inciting people's dissatisfaction with the government. The spread of this comic must be stopped. Thinking of this, the warring states immediately began to write at the desk, intending to make a notice to prohibit the sale of the Crimson Eyes in various newspapers, and intends to personally negotiate with the Dimensional Brigade to see what they mean. However, not long after his order came out, a phone bug on the desk suddenly rang. Seeing this special phone bug, warring states frowned. It was actually called from Mary Joa, the phone bug dedicated to the 5 old stars. "I am the warring states." Warring states answered the phone bug and quietly listened to the orders from the 5 old stars. At first, warring states' face was relatively calm, but the more he listened, the more gloomy his face became, and the pen in his hand was also broken by him unknowingly. Click _. The moment he hung up the phone, Sengoku finally couldn't bear it any longer, and slapped his palm on the table fiercely. Click. The heavy desk was instantly split in half, and the documents on the desk were scattered all over the place. But even so, the warring states still lingered in anger, standing on the spot, clenching his fists tightly. The reason for being so angry was the order from the 5 old stars just now. The 5 old stars ordered the warring states period to prohibit blocking the serialization of the Scarlet Eyes comics, and ordered him to collect terminally ill patients around the world and send them to Mary Joa. As for the reason, it turned out that the Tianlong people liked this comic, and were very interested in the way the nobles tortured the commoners, and wanted to try it for themselves. As for the nobles among them being killed, the warring states period did not have to think about it to know the thoughts of the Tianlong people. It is nothing more than the most noble of the Tianlong people, and it is not an existence that can be compared with the nobles. If you die, you will die. Almost trembling, he issued the changed order. Sengoku let out a deep breath, collapsed on the chair exhausted, and looked out the window. Even the 5 old stars have fallen. In the capital of 7 waters, in the villa, Roha is on the phone. "Okay, I'll trouble you this time, I'll call you the money later." After that, Roha smiled and hung up the phone. The order given from the celestial dragons this time has the meaning of some celestial dragons, but the actual leader is Roha. Through Tezolo's secret channel, 1 billion berry was given away to buy the Tianlong people's tough attitude towards the 5 old stars, in exchange for the smooth development of the crimson eye. Although Tesolo said it was a billion berry, Roja knew that the real number was far from that, and it was just a way for Tesolo to please him. Although such a transaction sounds like a complete loss, for Roja, as long as the comics can be published smoothly, money is not a problem at all. Thinking of the bone-marrow hatred of the Tianlong people in Tesolo's words just now, Roja couldn't help but twitch the corners of his mouth. While desperately trying to make money, collecting cards to kill the Tianlong people, and using the money to make way for the power of the Tianlong people, in order to develop, Tesolo's behavior can be regarded as a model of hard work. I just don't know what the Tianlong people will look like when they know that Tesolo is desperately trying to please them in order to kill all the Tianlong people. Various messy thoughts flashed through his mind, and after being silent for a while, Roja opened the lottery panel. The Crimson Eye has been published. Let's play a few games first. Chapter 89 First Summon, 1/4. Before extracting the Crimson Eye, Roja consumed 4 million fan points on the FZ and Magic Forbidden comics to replenish the fragments. Fragments were not used much because they lasted too little. However, it is different now. It already has the shard enhancement skill, and each shard can use Roja for 3 minutes, which can completely handle some small-scale battles with shards. Slightly satisfied, he looked at the suddenly full debris warehouse, and watched it for a while on the Psychological Mastery, Shokuho Exercise X6, and Roja nodded with satisfaction. With just 4 shards to go, he will have the ability of Shokuho to pray. He has coveted for a long time for this top-level ability of the spiritual system. Okay, it's time to kill my sister. Roja glanced at the remaining fan value, 6.2 million. Entering the amount of 1 million fans in the lottery interface, Roja started the lottery. Roja asked the system before that at the value of 1 million, there will be no garbage such as underwear at all, and there will be a certain chance to draw complete items. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host. Get character card. Minister Ornist Fragment X5. No use. Continue. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host. Obtained Taigu, Flying Miles Mostama, Fragments X3. 583 garbage. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host. Get character card. Boris Fragment X4. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host. Obtain Taigu, Water Dragon Reliance Dark Horse Forest Fragment X2. Rubbish. Rubbish. Especially the last one is actually 2 fragments. Looking at the extra fragments, Roja's face couldn't be darker for a while. Why did I change my job to become the Great Chief of Africa? I have accumulated fan value for several months. Don't play with me like this in the system. If you continue to play like this, you will have no friends. Roja, who was a little unhappy, consumed all the fan value this time and clicked on the lottery. Open black lens bracket. Congratulations to the host. Get the character card. Estes. Close black lens bracket. Okay. Roja's eyes suddenly widened, and he exclaimed subconsciously. Almost trembling, he took out the character card of Estes from the storage warehouse. On the front of the card, a beautiful woman in a white uniform with blue hair reaching her knees was clearly printed. It's Estes. The pair on Estes' chest paused. Roja held the card and couldn't put it down, and laughed happily. Unexpectedly, one day, he will actually be able to draw Estes. Who is Estes? The most powerful character in Scarlet Eye, the youngest and strongest general of the Empire. In terms of strength, he possesses the super strong Ice Emperor tool, Demon God appearance and Demon essence. In terms of wisdom, in a blink of an eye, she once pacified the northern alien race that was thought to take at least a year to defeat, and brutally buried 400,000 people alive. In terms of looks and figure, hey, this goes without saying. Thinking of Estes' strength, Roja couldn't help but compare it with Aokiji. As far as the ability to manipulate ice is concerned, Estes is better, but Aokiji has elementalization after all, which is really too buggy. But if Estes can learn to be armed, Roja has some expectations in his heart. Estes versus Aokiji. Interesting, I'm afraid there will be a glacier. Wait, with Estes' character, would he be willing to surrender himself? System, will the summoned character be under my control? The host can rest assured that all creatures summoned by the host will never do anything to harm the host, and the host has absolute control. The system's answer made Roja overjoyed. In addition to his strength against the sky, Estes is a stunning beauty. Although Roja is not a shaking S, but she can control the queen of shaking S, Estes, just think about it. With a full smile, Roja couldn't wait to use the character card. Character card consumption. Estes X1. Open black lens bracket, start calling. Close black lens bracket. The card in his hand instantly flew Roja's hand to the center of the living room, suspended in the air. The next moment, the card turned into a handful of gold powder, and it splattered on the ground. As if being pulled by some kind of force, when the gold powder fell to the ground, it just formed a mysterious magic circle. The next moment, the dazzling golden light flickered endlessly, and countless rays of light gradually formed a slender figure from top to bottom. Exquisite and perfect facial features, delicate snow-white skin, long blue waist-length hair, and Estes' arrogant figure. With just one glance, Roja was deeply satisfied and couldn't help laughing. This is Lao Tzu's Estes. This is another world. Estes looked around curiously, and the white military short skirt swayed, and the white greasy between the boots and the short skirt was very eye-catching. Roja, who was used to seeing the costumes of the pirate world, suddenly saw such a modern costume and was visually satisfied. It was not until the light of the magic circle gradually disappeared that Estes' body was completely formed. Realizing that he was able to act, Estes opened his slender legs and walked towards Roja step by step. It looks like you are the one who summoned me. As Estes said, he raised Roja's chin frivolously, his red lips gradually progressed, and a dangerous smile appeared on his face. Should I call you, Lord, man? Feeling the cool and delicate touch on his chin, Roja raised his eyebrows. I don't mind if you call me husband. A touch of cold bloomed, and layers of ice instantly rose under Roja's feet, but it did not cause any damage. Strange, if it was in the past, if others talked to me like this, they should have died long ago, but I have absolutely no intention of killing you. Estes slowly embraced Roja's shoulders, and gently spit out a chill in Roja's ear. Can you tell me why? It's up to you to feel it with your heart. Roja unceremoniously wrapped around Estes' waist, picked him up, and sat on the sofa. Estes was also not shy, and naturally rode on Roja's lap. Hot man, do you want to start right here? Estes blushed slightly, straightened his waist, and gently unbuttoned a button of his shirt. Suddenly, a pair of white greasy appeared, exuding a seductive luster. Because Estes was riding on Roja's lap, and he deliberately straightened his waist, that white greasy just appeared in front of Roja. Looking at the scene in front of him, Roja gulped. This Nima, as expected of the Queen of Shaking S, has the upper hand everywhere. Chapter 90 Powerful System. However, this size is indeed the largest by his side. I am afraid that only the grown-up Monet can compete with Estes. As for Kuroko and Makoto, I'm afraid they will be embarrassed and embarrassed. Seeing Estes unbutton the second button again, Roja's nose was hot, and he quickly called the system in his mind. System, what's going on? Why is Estes so active? All creatures summoned by the host will automatically lock their loyalty and favorability to the highest level. Close black lens bracket. Hold the grass, you finally have a conscience in the system. Just as Roja was stunned for a while, Estes had unbuttoned all the buttons. The white military uniform was placed on the body, the snow-white skin, the towering peaks, and the slender waist had a panoramic view, which made Roja dizzy and swallowed hard. Is this the full value of favorability? Hold the grass, the queen level reverse push. Estes, are you misunderstanding my words? Tilda, isn't this what you expected? Estes bit his bottom lip, his face was rosy and charming. The strong aura of Estes merged with the shy appearance of this little woman, and the coquettishness brought by it was simply unbearable. Roja's mind went blank, and he wanted to rectify Estes on the spot. But at this moment, the corner of his eye swiped upstairs inadvertently, just in time to see a small green-haired head sticking out from the steps on the second floor, staring intently here. Granulated sugar. How long has this child been watching here? Sugar upstairs saw Roja noticed him, and shrank back with a swish, and soon came the sound of the door closing. After being disturbed like this, Roja's mind was slightly awake. He slowly buttoned Estes, and the occasional touch on his fingers made Roja feel anxious, but fortunately, the buttons were quickly finished. I didn't mean it yet. Go upstairs and find a room to rest. I'll tell you about the world tomorrow. After saying this sentence with difficulty, Roja helped Estes up, then turned his face to the side and looked out the window. It's strange that even though it's a bad feeling to be rejected, I don't have any bad thoughts in my mind. Estes stood up and looked at his hands, puzzled. The ability of the system is not only powerful, but also makes it impossible for her to detect where the problem is. Seeing that Roja was no longer interested in speaking, Estes snorted naively, turned and walked upstairs. After she left, Roja's figure instantly disappeared in place. The next moment, the sound of falling water was heard in the sea outside the Seven Waters. Sea. With the cold water dissipating the heat in his heart, Roja floated on the sea and looked up at the night sky. This is so exciting. The next morning, Roja introduced Estes to Monet and the others. For the woman who pops out from time to time around Roja, several people have long been surprised. Ancient Britain, where Arturia lived, recognized the fact that the strong had more women. And Monet, as long as he lives by Roja's side. Even the sugar, who had been clamoring to marry Roja, only hummed twice, and then completely softened in front of Roja's food. In this regard, Roja couldn't help but sigh. Pirate world is so good. During the meal, Roja explained to her the current development direction and temporary enemy while explaining the situation of Estescop in this world. During the period, Roja also learned the timeline of her coming here from Estes. Before being summoned, Estes had just become the youngest general of the Empire, and only a few months ago drank the blood of the super dangerous species in the extreme north, and obtained the appearance of Tegu demon god demon essence. However, according to Estes, she is now able to release Mokobatmo. Mokobatmo, Estes' strongest move, can freeze all the surrounding time and space, which can be called a bug-like skill. After eating, the three of Monet went to the newspaper office first, while Roja was the one who called Shadow and told them to open the intelligence system to Estes. For this department that is hidden in the darkness and has dark methods, Roja has not told Monet for the time being that he does not want to pollute her purity. As for Arturia, although she was vaguely aware of it, she ignored it. As King Arthur, she has seen countless darkness in the world in her many years of battles, and a mere shadow organization is not worth her making a fuss about. Originally, according to the original plan, Roja planned to let Arturia be in charge of this organization after a while, but now that there is Estes, it should naturally be handed over to a more suitable person. After briefly handing over Shadow, Roja also set off for the magazine. Due to the gradual increase in the number of issuances, the price of trading cards in the black market has generally declined recently, but the price of SSR level is getting higher and higher. A single SSR has been fired at 150 million bells. Among them, the red-haired Shanks, known as the rarest SSR, was fired to 500 million berry. And priceless. In this regard, Roja is also very puzzled. Even the 4 Emperor pirates can't ignore such a high price. Which boss took it? Or was it thrown away by some ignorant guy? While the price of SSR continued to rise, countless people who dreamed of getting rich overnight bought fantasy magazines one after another. Some of them even bought hundreds or thousands of copies. I heard that some people went bankrupt because of this. In the case of such a hot market, the monthly income of the magazine has reached 600 million berg last month, and it is still increasing. Roja intends to add another fire to it and complete the side quest with a monthly income of 1 billion as soon as possible. As soon as he came to the newspaper office, Monet brought several documents for Roja. Now Dream magazine is already on the right track, and most of the things will be arranged by the people below. The slightly more important thing is that Monet took over. Only some issues that determine the development direction of the magazine will be handed over to Roja. Picking up the first document, Roja couldn't help laughing as soon as he read it. Chapter 91 Arrive in the Chambord Islands. The first document is about the election of the mayor of the Seven Waters. When Jack invaded last time, the mayor of the Seven Waters died on the spot in the battle with the pirates. After that, the entire Seven Waters city was jointly ruled by 7 major companies. However, because Dream magazine has always supported various industries in the Seven Waters city and vigorously studied the sea train, Dream magazine's reputation among the public has been greatly improved. Win 7 companies. Coupled with the support of the Dimensional Brigade behind the Dream magazine, it has become a candidate for the next mayor of the Seven Waters. After watching for a while, Roja put the document aside. He has no interest at all in being the mayor of the Seven Waters. If he wants to be the mayor, Monet will do it. The second document, which is also interspersed with a few basically fine-grained booklets. On the cover of the booklet, there are manga characters published by Roja, such as Arturia, Masaka Makoto, Yukihira Soma, etc. This is also the new method that Roja intends to increase income, a single book. In fact, Roja has already made preparations for the single print plan, but the printing efficiency of the printing house has always been close to saturation. After casually flipping through it a few times, Roja nodded with satisfaction. The production of the one-off book is far more exquisite than he imagined, and with the extra chapters he drew in it alone, I believe it will be a hit. When he put down the one-liner and looked at the third document, Roja couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. In the booklet of the third document is an ornate booklet with an invitation made of gold leaf on top of the booklet. Open black lens bracket Chapelty Islands, career referral office is grandly opened, and its first auction is about to be held. Close black lens bracket. This is the text printed on the gold leaf, and on the back of the gold leaf is a map of the Chambord Islands, where the job referral office is located in Area 1. Career Referral Agency. Roja picked up the invitation letter with some doubts, with an inexplicable sense of familiarity in his heart. Soon, Roja recalled information about job referrals. Isn't this the human auction venue owned by Doflamingo? A job referral agency is nothing more than an official designation given by the Navy. Thinking of the human auction, Roja lost interest a little, but he still picked up the booklet that introduced the auction items under the invitation letter and looked at it. It seems that the human auction venue should have just belonged to Doflamingo, and there should be some interesting things auctioned. The front of the album is not what Roja expected. There are all kinds of slaves, from the notorious pirates, to the noble lady who was expelled by the government, and even Roja saw the figures of mermaids and fur tribes. However, when he turned to the final product, Roja couldn't help raising his eyebrows. Superhuman devil fruit, childlike fruit. The rarest card in the world, SSR, red hair shanks. Big sharp knife, thunder sting. Shinin GT, J Kai. Doflamingo this time, it's really a big deal. Why? Roja played the picture book playfully, his eyes stopped on the fruit of childishness for a long time, and he had already made a decision in his heart. Go to the Chambord Islands and take part in this auction. No matter if Doflamingo wants to use this to promote the auction house, or if he wants to use these auction items to design someone, he must get the fruit of childishness. This kind of bug-level fruit, even if you keep it in your hands, it is impossible for others to grasp it. Roja, who had already made a decision in his heart, looked at the time when the auction was held. Just a week later. It's time for a trip to the Chambord Islands. But before that, Roja has to arrange the affairs of the Dream magazine. This auction, because of the childlike fruit and SSR Shanks, is expected to attract a large number of strong people, and Roja is not sure when he will be able to come back. After a hectic day, Roja took Estes and launched teleportation early the next morning. When the two opened their eyes, they had already appeared on a beach. "This is the Chambord archipelago, you said." Estes looked forward, his eyes blurred. "Well, this is the Chambord archipelago." Roja nodded, also looking forward, his eyes full of shock. Even if Roja knew the appearance of the Chambord Islands in the anime, he couldn't help but be intoxicated by the scenery in front of him. At first glance, it is the canopy shrouded in the Chambord archipelago, and below the canopy are smooth tree trunks. Between the tree trunks, there are countless bubbles floating in the air, and under the light mist and sunlight, they emit colorful rays of light, decorating the island like a dream. If you just look at the surface, this is simply an island that only appears in a fairy tale world. Just as Roja was admiring the beauty that was impossible to see in the previous life, Estes suddenly spoke. "This island is beautiful, let's occupy it." Roja. Flicking the corners of his eyes, Roja looked at Estes helplessly. Should it be said to be a war madman? The first impression is not to admire, but to occupy the entire island. "We'll talk about the occupation later." Roja sighed, "We're going to clean up the little bugs now." Before he finished speaking, on the treetop not far away, the Yueling marrow fluid suddenly turned into countless spikes, like sea urchins. At the same time, a scream came from the canopy, and after a while, there was no life. When the moon spirit marrow fluid turned back into a silver sphere and rolled back to Roja's feet, Roja looked forward impatiently. "Fight if you want, or get out of here if you don't." There was a sudden commotion from the surrounding tree canopy, and the next moment, dozens of black shadows jumped from the tree canopy and surrounded Roja with weapons. "Robbers." Estes glanced around coldly. "Well, a bunch of worms living in the Chambord Islands." Roja casually glanced at the Alchiman mangrove tree on the other side and saw the sign that he had been looking for. Number 16. Illegal Zone. No wonder it was attacked. "It's all mine." Estes laughed excitedly, with bloodthirsty killing intent on his face. "Please." A few minutes later, a blood-stained pirate with a big beard 3.0 face left the beach tremblingly with Roja and the two of them. Behind them, there was an ice crystal jungle. "Big Lord, where are you going?" The bearded pirate's waist was almost bent at 90 degrees, looking straight at Roja's feet, not daring to float towards Estes, as if the glamorous Estes was a prehistoric beast. No, at this time, Estes was even more ferocious than the prehistoric beast in his heart. He was simply a demon incarnation. Thinking of just now, one of my companions was froze his eyes out because he looked at Estes too many times. He is still mourning in the ice thicket, and the bearded waist is even lower. Looking at the bearded man who almost hid his head between his legs in front of him, Roja twitched the corners of his mouth. "Get up and walk and take us to the 13th area, there should be the bar I'm looking for." Chapter 92 Hades, Rayleigh. 4/4. An hour later, Roja passed through one area after another and came to a small wooden house. Looking up, there is a wooden sign on the roof, which reads, "Aunt Shaw's Ripping Off Bar." "Sir, it's here." The bearded pirate stood by Roja's side and rubbed his hands. Can I?" Roja waved his hand, indicating that the bearded pirate can go. The bearded man who got the pardon almost rolled and crawled away. "Is this your old friend here?" Estes said with a playful look at Aunt Shaw with his arms crossed. "No, I'm here to find someone. There is a very strong uncle in this shop. In his heyday, maybe you can't beat him." Turning his eyes away from Estes, the plumpness that stood out because of the surrounding, Roja pushed the door and walked in. "I can't beat him." Estes, who was behind him, lit up and walked in. "Welcome." As soon as the two of Roja entered the door, the bell on the door rang for a while, and a woman behind the bar turned her back to him, said without looking back, and then asked, "Want something?" "Just have a drink, thank you." "I want a drink." 2 cups of tea, thank you. Roja made a decision unceremoniously. Estes raised his brows, then sat down a little tangled. The power of the system made it impossible for her to refuse any decision of Roja. Roja, who noticed Estes' expression, secretly laughed in his heart. Of shaking S, cool. The woman with her back to him bent down and operated for a while, then turned around and put 2 cups of hot tea in front of the two of them. Please use. After she finished speaking, she took out a cigarette from her pocket and gave Estes a dreadful look before lighting it. Do you mind? Whatever. Estes sipped his tea. Shachi smiled, lit a cigarette, and sat in front of Luo Hao, puffing clouds and mist. Sure enough, it's Shachi. Luo Hao couldn't help but said in his heart after seeing her appearance. This woman has neat short hair, the ends of the short hair are slightly raised, and there is a sense of vicissitudes in her eyes. Although she is much younger than in the anime, the charm of her body remains unchanged. %% Kai Carrot. Just when Roja was looking at Shachi, Shachi was also looking at the two of Roja, and after breathing out a cigarette, she said with some surprise, I didn't expect that the agent, Roja, would also sit in the store obediently. Have tea. Roja raised his eyebrows and asked, You know me? Roja was a little surprised to be recognized by Shachi so quickly. Of course, don't underestimate the power of intelligence, especially for an elderly person like me. Shachi put her arms around her arms, holding the cigarette between her 2 fingers. After taking a deep breath, she exhaled a puff of smoke. Big men like you who can disrupt the world by themselves are on our list of priorities. The list that must not be provoked. Shachi crossed her eyes and looked at Roja with a smile, without the fear in her eyes. By the way, Shachi suddenly looked curiously at Estes, with a little fear in her eyes. This beautiful lady is also a member of your dimensional brigade. Shachi, who has a very rich life experience, can see Roja's easygoing personality at a glance, so he will joke with him. However, in the face of Estes, Shachi did not dare to go beyond the slightest, and even said that a fine layer of cold sweat had risen on her back at this time. From Estes, she not only saw the incomparably tyrannical domineering, but also noticed the strong bloody aura on Estes. The bloody aura that came out of the sea of blood from the mountain of corpses. In terms of aura alone, Rayleigh may be better, but in terms of blood, the 3 Rayleighs are no match for the woman in front of him. Extremely dangerous. Absolutely do not provoke. Shachi had already put such a label on Estes in her heart. Aware of Shachi's fear, Roja felt a sense of pride in his heart. The queen's domineering, only he can surrender. Aunt Sha wants to know about the Dimension Brigade. Roja held a teacup and looked at Shachi playfully. Of course, you don't know how much any piece of information about the Dimension Brigade is worth. Shachi stretched out a finger and clenched her fist. A piece of information about the traces of the Dimension Brigade members is worth $1,000. 1. If it is a new member's information, at least tenfold. 100 million bellies. Roja smiled frivolously. I don't lack this money, but if Aunt Sha is willing to let your man talk to me, I don't mind telling you more about the Dimensional Brigade. News. In an instant, the smile on Shachi's face disappeared, and she looked at Roja with some vigilance. The people from the Dimension Brigade are looking for my man. It's not the Dimension Brigade, it's just me. I want to make a deal with Rayleigh about the news of Roger's son. Clap. _ There was the sound of a wine bottle falling to the ground and shattering from the inside of the bar. The next moment, an old man with white hair and a straight scar on his right eye pushed open the wooden door of the inside and came to the front. It was Rayleigh. Little guy, your jokes are not funny at all. Rayleigh picked up a bottle of wine from the bar, and sat down opposite Roja. Pressing down Estes, who was about to move beside him, Roja smiled confidently. Portgas de Luhue. Kacha. _ Hearing this name, Rayleigh could no longer remain calm, and the wine bottle in his hand was instantly crushed in half by him. Pouring the remaining wine into his mouth, Rayleigh clapped his hands on the table and stared straight at Roja. I take the deal. Tell me everything you know. Immediately, Roha told Rayleigh what Luju had done for the Navy to track down and let Ace speak out smoothly. After learning all this, the right wrist of the Pirate King, the Pluto, who once frightened the Navy, could not help crying and was immersed in grief. Roha did not continue to disturb Riley, and ordered Estes to stay here, not allowed to fight with Riley, and got up and left the pub. After walking out of the tavern, he casually bought a map of Chambord from the shop on the side of the road, and after buying some small gifts, Roha walked straight to Area 1. There is still a week to go before the auction, and there is still a lot to do. Chapter 93 Mystery Assembly, 1/4. When Roha arrived at Area 1, it was already night. At this time, he was wearing a black cloak and covered his face with a silver mask. Even his exposed skin was smeared with a special resin, and the color turned into a deep bronze color. This piece of equipment was specially prepared by Roha before coming to the Chambord Islands. To be honest, he has no interest in participating in the auction of Doflamingo. It would be better if he could grab the fruit in advance. Arriving outside the auction house, Roha pointed his toes, put his hands on the wall, and came to the window on the top floor. With a slight pull, the window opened. Roha squatted at the window and frowned as he looked at the messy footprints on the floor. It seems that in front of him, there are still several waves of scheming guys. After a careful search, Roha crept into the corridor. As soon as he reached the corridor, Roha was stunned. As far as I can see, there are 3 or 4 men in black walking through the hall below, and in the corridors of the other floors, there are sounds of searching for things from time to time. What's so special about this? Thief meeting, group theft. Doflamingo doesn't care. Roha naturally divides himself into thieves. Crunch, _. The door next to Roha suddenly opened, and a young man with short yellow hair who just covered his face with a black cloth came out. When he saw Roha, he was obviously stunned, and then he even greeted Roha. "Hey man, are you here to steal too?" Also. Roha twitched the corners of his mouth. Is the relationship between the thieves so harmonious now? Before Roha could speak, the yellow-haired man who seemed to be talkative kept talking. Roha also took the opportunity to understand the current situation. It turns out that since the announcement of the human auction, a large number of outlaws have poured into the Chambord Islands. Many of them are like Roha, who want to sneak in quietly and steal the auction items. In the first few days, the guards of the human auction house were still able to withstand it and killed a lot of people. However, as the number of pirates increased, some powerful pirates gradually appeared, and the guards began to suffer casualties. In the end, they simply gave up the night patrol and let the thieves come in and out. Of course, there was nothing in the auction house, and everyone was busy. After the news spread, although there are still people sneaking into the auction house every day, the number of people has been reduced by a lot. Alternative. IIU and GT.C. Oh yes, I heard that there will be a big deal tomorrow night. Buddy, you look very strong, do you want to try it? The yellow-haired man suddenly said, What deal? Show. I heard that I want to rob a ship that transports goods. Whether it is an auction item from the auction house will be known until tomorrow night. Huang Fa Nan rubbed his hands vulgarly. As long as it is 10,000 berry, I will tell your meeting point. Roha looked coldly at the chatterbox and threw a bag of money. Take off the mask, if you dare to lie to me, you will die. The cold killing intent covered his whole body. The yellow-haired man shuddered, and quickly took off his mask, revealing an ordinary face, and flattered. I can't, I'm squatting here every day, just relying on this information to make some money. How could it be possible to deceive the uncle? After knowing the meeting place, Roha searched the auction house again, and finally left the auction house empty-handed. With too little information at hand, Roha planned to go to Shachi to ask what happened to this transport ship. Back at the bar was still deserted, and Rayleigh didn't know where he went, but Estes and Shachi didn't sleep. They sat and chatted together. Hearing the door opening, the two turned back together and saw Roha who came in. Aunt Shah, Roha greeted with a smile. I'm back. Compared with the daytime, Shachi's smile was a lot more sincere. I was talking to Estes about when I was a pirate. Taking advantage of the situation to sit beside Estes, Shachi poured a cup of tea for Roha, and then asked, how is it, what is there to receive after coming back so late? Empty hands. Roha spread his hands helplessly, but I have something to ask you about. Roha immediately relayed what Huang Fanon said to Shachi. After listening to Roha's exclusive, Shachi thought silently for a while and lit a cigarette. I know about this, it's been a lot of trouble recently. After taking a breath, Shachi continued, a lot of forces have come to me recently to inquire about the situation, but to be honest, I don't know much about this matter. Many only know that there are at least 3 pirate groups, plus some scattered people, at least 400 or 500 people are eyeing that ship. Having said this, Shachi lightly smiled twice, but come to think of it, these people are probably just idiots to you. What you really need to pay attention to are the guards on that ship. Have some great guys. I heard that there was a pirate ship and stopped them, but one of them cut the whole ship in half with one knife, and all the crew died in the subsequent attack of the Sea Kings. Shachi sighed with emotion. The future is terrifying. Cut the boat in half with one knife. Roha's eyes lit up. This kind of guy is exactly the sword training object he has been looking for. If he can fight with each other for life and death, his swordsmanship can definitely improve a lot. Estes on the side was also eager to try. I want to go too. No, you stay here. Roha refused Estes without hesitation and let Estes go. What else is there to do with him? It is estimated that the whole ship was frozen into an ice sculpture as soon as it was opened. The next morning, Roha got up early, and asked Rayleigh about the training methods of armed domineering and seeing domineering. After a day of practice, he quietly changed into night clothes and went to the meeting point. Because the gathering time was late at night, the residents of the island did not wander outside. Roha kept walking, heading towards the meeting point, the edge of the Chambord Islands, galloping away. Along the way, Roha can be seen from time to time, and people who cover up their appearance like him are rushing towards the other side. Soon, Roha rushed to a beach. At this time, there were dozens of people scattered on the beach. They tacitly surrounded the bonfire in the center and kept a certain distance from each other. Looking towards the center of the crowd, you can see a phone bug, apparently left there by the person who posted the message. Randomly looking for a place, Roha sat down and began to wait silently. Chapter 94. Where's your fucking cannon? People came to the beach one after another, but no matter who they were, they didn't speak after they came, just found a place to stay and looked at the people around them cautiously. Everyone here is a competitor. Roha also looked at the people on the beach, wanting to see who organized the operation, but he watched for a long time and didn't see why, which made Roha quite depressed. Now he has no way to see how strong others are, unless he uses the Overlord color to make a large-scale identification. However, his tyrannical characteristics are too obvious, and it is easy to be investigated by those who are interested. In extreme boredom, Roha called up the system and flipped through the comics he owned. Some time ago, he picked up a very interesting comic. Although there is no power system at all, some of the skills are quite useful. As time passed, the atmosphere on the beach became more and more dignified, and at the moment when it finally arrived at the appointed time, the phone bug placed in the middle made a sound of purr purr. Someone walked over, picked up the phone bug, put it aside carefully, and returned to the crowd. The people should have arrived, so let's start now. Call yourself, I'm Shadow. There was a strange male voice on the other side of the phone, and you didn't have to think about it to know that the voice was deliberately changed. No one spoke, everyone was listening quietly. As for the so-called Shadow, it was just a pseudonym. The task is very simple. Tomorrow night, the target ship will pass near Sakar Island. Your task is to rob that ship. Everything on the ship belongs to you. I only need the devil fruit they escorted. Devil fruit. Suddenly there was a murmur on the beach. Even Roja couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Summoning so many people, the reward alone is sky high, just for a devil fruit. If this is the case, the ability of that fruit is probably extraordinary. Could it really be the Don Quixote family's ship? But if that's the case, the people present are probably not enough for Brother Ming to fight alone. Has a problem. Roja frowned, but quickly relaxed. It's fun to have a problem. Now, how many people in the world can cheat him? Finally, the whispering on the beach is over. What's the reward? We can't attack a ship that doesn't know the details just because of your words. Yes, and also, which faction does the ship belong to? How is the strength? You'd better not write empty promises and do something real. The people who spoke were the most powerful pirate forces in this operation, representing 3 vicious pirate groups. The voice on the other side of the phone worm was silent for a while. After seeing that no one asked any more questions, O continued, the other party is the transport ship of the human auction house, and the person in charge of guarding it is a pirate with a bounty of 50 million yuan. And some subordinates of the human auction house. As for the remuneration, I have already placed a bounty in the dark world. As long as the devil fruit is sent to me, I can get 1 billion shells. Whoa, underscore. As soon as I heard the amount of the bounty, the originally silent scene suddenly burst into an uproar. Billion berry. Enough for them to spend a lifetime. Immediately, a pirate leader took out a phone bug and inquired about it. After a while, he put down the phone bug and nodded excitedly. It's true. This time the whole beach was completely boiling, and the pirates cheered like a festival. Roja watched silently for a while, and after confirming that the person opposite the phone bug would not speak anymore, he smiled coldly and turned to leave. There is only one fruit, and at least thousands of people participated. How many can survive? Roja glanced back at the cheering pirates on the beach, as if looking at a group of tombstones. 2 nights later, Roja reached the top of Sakar Island ahead of schedule. This is a small island less than 100 nautical miles away from the Chambord Islands. The entire island is covered by dense forests. The island is high and hollow, and only the center of the island has a peak about 1,000 meters high. Because of the unique geographical environment, the interior of the island is full of poisonous insects, which is not suitable for human survival at all. In the process of arriving at the top of the mountain, Roja saw more than a dozen pirate spies with his own eyes. He was accidentally bitten by a poisonous insect, and fell down screaming after a while. He nailed a lurking poisonous snake with a knife, and Roja took the telescope and began to observe around the island. As early as yesterday, someone started ambush arrangements, with torpedoes, locks, and clippers. Roja even saw a few cannons on a reef beach, with a bunch of chain bullets placed next to them. This is a kind of special cannonball. 2 small cannonballs smaller than the diameter of the cannon are connected in series with a chain. After firing, one cannonball drags the other cannonball centrifugally and flies out. It is specially aimed at the sails and masts of the ship. Used to limit the movement of enemy ships. Even in the plot of the original work, the role of cannonballs is no different from selling cuteness, but it just follows the development of the plot. If one round of artillery goes down, the opponent's ship will sink. What else does Oda draw? In fact, the fact that naval artillery bombardment is still the mainstream method of combat for low-end and middle-end pirates. Even the Navy has not stopped the development of new naval guns. The thoughts gradually diverged, and when Roja and others were a little impatient, the pirate watcher on the other side of the mountain exclaimed, "Come on." Looking in the direction of the watcher's observation, you can vaguely see a ship heading here. According to this situation, after 10 minutes, you will pass by Sakar Island. But at this moment, the sea outside Sakar Island suddenly fluctuated. A huge water bag slowly rose, and after dozens of seconds, a large pirate ship appeared in front of everyone. On the outside of the pirate ship, there is a layer of huge bubble wrapping, and because of this, it can lurk on the bottom of the sea. Coating. Although I have seen it in the anime for a long time, this way of appearing still opened Roja's eyes. Although Roja looked very interesting, the surrounding pirates who participated in the ambush immediately exploded with anger. Someone actually acted in advance. Want 3.7 to swallow the spoils alone. TMD, everyone on me. Get on the speedboat, can't let them get ahead. First mate, where's your goddamn cannon? Push it out to Lao Su and blast that bastard pirate group too. Thousands of pirates poured out of their hiding places, rushing towards the transport ship like a tide. At this time, there was only a distance of more than 10 meters between the pirate ship and the transport ship, and the battle was about to start. Strangely, it was the transport ship that started the battle first. Several shadows jumped high from the transport ship and landed on the pirate ship. The person at the head is a strong figure with a double sword. On his shoulder, Roja could vaguely see a small black shadow. It's like animal. Chapter 95 Reappearing Fruit. Looking at the man who rushed into the pirate ship to kill, an inexplicable sense of familiarity came to my mind. Just when Roja wanted to open the stigmata to see clearly, the other party had already entered the cabin. Shaking his head, Roja had already activated teleportation in the next moment. No matter who the other party is, you will know in a moment. At this time, the tide-like pirates had already taken various watercraft and surrounded the transport ship. The place where Roja appeared was above them, and before he started to fall, Roja's figure disappeared again. When the second teleportation ended, Roja had already appeared inside the cabin. There was no one inside the cabin, the sound of running footsteps kept coming from the deck, and there were faint sounds of muskets and shelling. It seemed that the pirate army had already fought with the guards. Quickly shuttled through the cabin, and it didn't take long for Roja to find the treasure room. It's just that Roja couldn't help frowning before entering the treasure room. Outside the treasure room, two burly men fell to the ground, each with a dagger stuck to the side of their necks. Killed at the same time. Someone is already here. Roja's face sank, and he rushed into the treasure room in an instant, glanced casually, and Roja's body suddenly exuded an uncontrollable murderous aura. I saw a pure gold iron box in the center of the treasure room. The box was filled with golden sand and gems, forming a groove, which looked extremely luxurious. What really made Roja frown was that there was nothing on the groove where the devil fruit should have been placed. Someone took the devil fruit before him. Interesting. Roja suddenly grinned, and the momentum on his body gradually became cold. As soon as he turned around, Roja rushed out of the treasure room and disappeared around the corner. Crunch, crunch, underscore. Not long after Roja left, there was a sudden creaking of wooden boards in the treasure room, as if someone was moving. The sound only sounded for a moment, and then disappeared again. It wasn't until a few minutes later, as if to confirm that no one would come again, the crunching sound of the wooden board suddenly increased, and in a blink of an eye, it reached the door of the treasure room. Woo, underscore. Just as he was about to go out, a whip leg suddenly hit from the top of the cabin. Boom. A sound of hitting the flesh came out, and the next moment, the wooden box in the treasure room was knocked down. Sure enough, someone. Roja jumped off the top of the cabin, looked at the knocked-down wooden box, and slashed it with a sword. The messy voice sounded, Roja slashed the sky with a sword, but also locked the opponent's position. In the state of a saint, no sound from the entire ship could hide from him. Before the sword was closed, Roja waved his sword to the side. At this time, his sword speed even brought an afterimage, which was not something that ordinary people could dodge, and just a few moves had already forced the opponent to the corner. Abu Shalom, if you don't disarm your ability, you won't need to appear again. Roja pointed to the corner with his sword, his tone was cold. There was a weak cough in the air, and the air in front of Roja suddenly fluctuated. The next moment, a blond man covered in scars and wearing only a pair of shorts appeared in front of Roja. It is Mariah's subordinate, the transparent fruit ability, Absalom. At this time, Absalom was bleeding from the corner of his mouth, and his chest was sunken, and he looked at Roja with fear. Roja's kick just now almost kicked him to death. "Where's the fruit?" Roja's eyes stared, and Absalom was immediately frightened, and he quickly took out a fruit from the pocket on his waist and handed it to Roja. "This is..." Looking at the devil fruit in his hand, Roja's pupils could not help shrinking violently, and his face showed a look of horror for the first time. The whole body is blue and looks like an apple, and there are countless small lightning fruit patterns on the surface. "It's the thundering fruit of Anilu." Roja didn't expect to see the appearance of the thunder fruit so quickly. Suppressing the excitement in his heart and putting the thunder fruit into the storage space, Roja kicked Absalom. "Can you still move? Get up for me if you can." The ability of the transparent fruit is really precious, and Roja was a little reluctant to kill Absalom, and planned to take it back for brainwashing and throw it into the shadow for use. "Cough cough, can be." Asabram nodded quickly, struggling to stand up. His face was a little morbidly pale, and he has not yet recovered from Roja's kick. Grabbing Asabram, Roja started teleportation, intending to send Asabram back to the Seven Waters first, and then come back to find the people in the guards to practice swords. However, at this moment, a series of roars suddenly came from above the two of them, as if someone was piercing the entire ship. The next moment, a big blue-flamed bird shattered layers of decks and instantly appeared on top of the two of them. Seeing the two people in the treasure room, Qingyan Big Bird suddenly exuded infinite murderous intent. The angry blue flame Big Bird didn't even think about it, with the inertia of falling from the sky, slammed the top of Roja's head with a claw. "Go to hell." Chapter 96 Swordsman, Roja. Phoenix, Marco. As early as when Marco smashed the deck and rushed here, Roja was aware of it. After seeing Marco, he was not too surprised, but avoided it, and greeted him with a punch. Boom! The chaotic airflow rose out of thin air, and the floor under Roja's feet suddenly appeared cobweb-like cracks. "Go away!" Roja screamed and suddenly exerted his strength. Suddenly, Marco was hit back by Roja like a cannonball, and flew into the sky along the hole that came just now. Although Marco was thrown away, the floor under Roja's feet was also instantly shattered due to the sudden increase in pressure. With his feet empty, Roja fell to the lower level. Before he could stand firm, a shriek that ripped through the air suddenly came from the rear right, and two long knives slashed towards his chest and lower body respectively, extremely sinister. Before the blade could reach his body, a coolness appeared on Roja's body. "You want to kill me?" Roja's face turned cold, and he slashed out with a knife. The last one came first, and he slashed the enemy's cheek head-on. At this moment, a squeaking sound suddenly came from the other side of the body, and at the same time as the sound sounded, a monkey opened fire at Roja with a musket. Attack from both sides. Boom! A huge roar suddenly came from the cabin, and a figure rolled back and flew backwards, and finally inserted the two knives into the ground to stop the figure. In the cabin at this time, Roja threw away the monkey corpse on the sword at will, and looked coldly at the enemy who attacked him. Double knives, backhand, with monkeys. Rider, Dorma. Plus a team captain Marco. This ship turned out to be the transport ship of the Whitebeard pirates. Bah! Spitting out the bullet that was bitten by himself, Roja not only did not mean to retreat at all, but became excited. The Whitebeard pirates are just right. Strong enough. Such an opponent is the best target for sword training. On the other side, Doma saw the monkey killed by Roja, and the whole person froze in place. The next moment, his eyes suddenly turned blood red. The whole person went crazy. "I'm going to kill you." The floor beneath his feet let out an overwhelmed whimper, and Doma rushed towards Roja with a roar. At the same time, the deck above Roja's head shattered again, and Marco went back and forth. That's it, only a deadly fight can resolve our grievances. In Roja's heart, the fire of fighting intent was burning, and an unprecedented comprehension flooded into his heart. He yanked the knife back to his side, squatted down, and pressed the knife face with his left hand. The next moment, the sword body from left to right, from bottom to top, draws a life-threatening arc. Hum. A dazzling sword energy suddenly appeared, and in this dark cabin, a deadly light bloomed. The gorgeous sword energy flashed away like a meteor, and disappeared almost instantly. Wherever it passed, everything was divided into two halves. Now. Marco's pupils shrank, and instantly gave up the action of continuing to attack Roja, spread his wings, and blocked Doma. The waters near Sakar Island have been completely stained with blood. Thousands of pirates had no resistance in the face of absolute strength, and were slaughtered in just 10 minutes. Although they are only facing ordinary members of the Whitebeard pirates, for them, it is already an unattainable height. Countless corpses floated on the sea, attracting many carnivorous fish to devour, and even among them there were sea kings. Several pirate ships have completely become empty ships, and some ships have even been interrupted by the middle. Only the huge wreckage floats on the sea, showing the glory of the past. The noisy scene 10 minutes ago is no longer there, only the mourning of the seriously injured and the sound of the Whitebeard members making up their swords. Just when the members of the Whitebeard pirates thought the battle was over. Scoff. To everyone's surprise, on their ship, a cold and severe light suddenly appeared from the cabin at the bottom of the ship, instantly crossed the entire transport ship, and flew into the sky until it disappeared. Immediately afterwards, a clearly visible crack appeared on the surface of the ship. This crack is extremely neat, as if someone measured it with a ruler, drew a trajectory, and then split it with a huge blade. Crack. After this crack appeared, almost in the next second, there was a dense creaking sound from the side of the transport ship. Under the horrified eyes of the members of Whitebeard, the entire transport ship started from the middle and began to break. The ship is about to split. Everyone get out. What the hell is going on? What about Boss Marco and Boss Doma? Some pirates who stayed on the transport ship jumped off the ship one after another, looking for a place to stay. One of the pirates saw a companion standing still beside the rift, and hurriedly dragged him. However, this pull made him cry out in surprise. He only pulled out half of his body, while the other half fell on the deck, blood and internal organs flowing all over the floor. That companion was cut in half by the sudden sword energy. Such a bloody scene, even if this pirate had experienced hundreds of battles, he couldn't accept it for a while, and stood blankly on the spot. Just when he was sluggish, a black shadow suddenly rushed out of the crack and landed on the top of half of the transport ship. Immediately behind him was a big blue-flamed bird. After Marco stared at Roja, he flew to the other side of the ship with Doma, who was seriously injured in his hand. Under their feet, the transport ship was gradually sinking. Heal Doma, everyone get out of here. Handing Doma to the pirate beside him, Marco looked at Roja with a solemn expression. Who is your excellency? Do you really think that a great swordsman can fight us? Great swordsman. Roja's heart moved, and he reacted immediately. It is estimated that the power of the sword chi just now really reached the level of a great swordsman, so it was misunderstood by Marco. What Marco didn't know, however. At this time, Roja, in addition to relying on his strong physical fitness and the blessing of the stigmata, can use the sword chi comparable to the great swordsman. The rest, whether it is swordsmanship or the use of chi, or only ordinary swordsman. Level. Seeing that Roja was silent, Marco's face couldn't help but show a trace of hostility. Although he had the desire to smash Roja into tens of thousands of pieces, when he thought of killing a big swordsman here, it was likely to cause a large number of deaths among his companions, and Marco still suppressed the killing intent in his heart. Your Excellency, do you really want to fight against the Whitebeard pirates? As long as you give me the Thunderbolt fruit, I'll treat it like nothing happened today. How about that? While persuading Roja, Marco gestured behind his back, signaling the members to stay away from here. Are you kidding me? Roja chuckled. The thing is in my hands, how can I give it back to you? It's better like this, you can make the decision and give me the fruit, you can also kill a few people. What? The members of the Whitebeard pirates who were retreating around stopped one by one, looking at Roja in astonishment. Is this kid crazy? He stole something from Whitebeard. Not only did he not return it, but also let the captain of the first team decide to give it to him. They have seen arrogance, but they have never seen such arrogance. Chapter 97 Secret Sword Yan returned, pseudo. Ha ha. Marco laughed angrily. A mere big swordsman, dare to be so arrogant, really think of himself as an eagle eye. There is also a gap between the great swordsmen. After looking around for a week and confirming that the team members have stayed away from here, Marco could no longer suppress the anger in his heart, and he shot in anger. Since you don't plan to pay it back, then I'll take it from your body in person. Leaping into the air, spreading his arms, the green flame wings appeared instantly, and Marco dived towards Roja at a high speed. Seeing this, Roja's eyes narrowed, and his sword intent was full of vitality. With a flick of his wrist, Liang Kue Dao Shui Zuo instantly appeared in his hand. Because he wanted to hide his identity, he had no plans to use Muramasa at all. Go to hell. Marco fell from the sky, a punch that ripped through the air. Not only that, the moment his fist was just swung out, his arms had already turned pitch black. Armed arrogance. Look at your armament or my sword. Roja laughed, didn't dodge or evade, and slashed out in the face. Boom. Fist 130 swords met. Roja frowned suddenly, and suddenly forced Marco to retreat. At the moment when Marco retreated, the transport ship under Roja's feet shattered inch by inch. Come on, it's just inconvenient at sea. Roja pouted, jumped off the transport ship without hesitation, and walked on the ruins of the pirate boat all the way to Sakar Island. Don't try to run. After Marco whirled around in the air to unload, he saw Roja jumping among the ruins at a glance. Stop him. Leave him at sea. Captain wins. Everyone attack. The white-bearded members, who had experienced hundreds of battles, saw at a glance that Roja couldn't use his full strength on the sea, and launched attacks one after another. The target they attacked was not only Roja, but also the footsteps on the road that Roja must pass. Noisy. Dodging a flying axe that broke through the air, Roja stomped to death a shark that jumped up from the bottom of the sea and jumped into the air. Swipe the sword and swept it. It is a sword strike. The target is the group of pirates who don't know how to live or die. Don't. Marco struck immediately. He faced Roja's sword energy head-on. Of course, he knew the terrifying power. If this knife was hit, the pirates would definitely suffer heavy casualties. With a bite of silver teeth, Marco decisively gave up chasing Roja, and instead spread his wings, blocking the sword energy. With the wings tilted, Marco did not choose to resist the sword chi, but kept retreating with the sword chi, removing the power from it bit by bit, and deflecting the sword chi into the air in one breath after 100 meters. Scoff. The dazzling sword energy flashed away in the air. Clap clap clap. Suddenly a burst of applause came, and Marco turned his head to see that Roja was standing on the beach, looking at him with a smile on his face. As expected of the captain of the first team, he has a lot of combat experience. You bastard. Marco gritted his teeth and roared. He knew that he had been tricked by Roja again. At the same time of anger, he raised his vigilance in his heart. Although Roja's fighting style was shameless, it was indeed the best solution at the time. He couldn't understand, such a powerful master, even if he used a mask and cloak to cover his appearance, there should be some ways to identify his identity. However, he has yet to match Roja with any master. Could it be the monster swordsman drawn by Dugu sword art again? Recalling that some time ago, he specially came to visit the old man, and the sword energy was almost overflowing with the terrifying old man, Marco confirmed his guess. MD, the Dream Brigade is really annoying. If you have a secret, you can use it yourself. If you have nothing to do with it, it's really disgusting. Although there are thousands of thoughts in his heart, it is only a few seconds in reality, and the battle must continue. The pride of the Whitebeard pirates does not allow Marco to retreat. Concentrating his mind, he spread his wings, and Marco took off again, with a piercing scream, rushing towards Roja. Just in time to try a new trick with you. Looking at Marco flying at high speed, Roja held his knives high at his side, and what he did at the next moment made Marco stop the charge in surprise. Roja actually closed his eyes. Phaeon senses the vibration of the atmosphere and changes its flight direction accordingly. Therefore, no matter what kind of blow it is, it cannot cut down the swallow. The knife is just a line. It makes sense that the swallow cannot be caught in the air. Then just surround its retreat. One knife attacked the swallow, and the other knife blocked the escape route of the swallow who was dodging by the wind. However, they are very sensitive, and this long knife can't catch up with the second knife. If you want to succeed, you have to do both in an instant, almost at the same time. If they were all at the same time, both cuts would be too slow anyway. For this reason, there should also be a third cut that blocks the side escape route. Quote. Roja muttered to himself, as if explaining something, and as if he was comprehending a certain state. Pretend to be a ghost. Seeing that Roja was not moving, Marco finally couldn't wait any longer. He spread his wings and rose to a high altitude, fell at a high speed, and kicked Roja with the momentum of a goshawk and a rabbit. The rapid fall brought the whistling sound of the wind, and Marco believed that if the opponent really dared to resist this blow, he would be dead. Just when Marco's attack was about to hit Roja, finally opened his eyes. Secret Sword, Yan Return. Chapter 98 Roja's Secret Weapon. The two people on the beach staggered past. Marco staggered a few steps, and the next moment hurriedly flew into the sky. In the distance, even the members of the Whitebeard Pirates felt Marco's embarrassment. What's the matter? How did Captain Marco fly again? Are you going to attack again? Cough. Let me get up. Doma, who had been resting on the side, suddenly struggled to stand up. Boss Doma, what are you doing? Sit down quickly. Captain Marco can handle him. You have no idea what's going on. Doma suddenly roared, and after roaring, he coughed violently, and blood gradually overflowed from the corner of his mouth. Originally, with his strength, he would not have been beaten like this by Roja's sword. However, Doma at that time fell into a state of madness because the monkeys who depended on each other were killed by Roja, and rushed to Roja with a life-for-life mentality. Unprepared, he was hit directly by the sword energy. If Marco hadn't helped him resist some, I am afraid that Doma at this time has become a corpse. That person's swordsmanship. No, it should be because the swordsmanship was too strong just now, and the captain has already suffered a big loss. Doma sat down on the side of the boat with some collapse, and looked at Roja on the beach in horror. What kind of person can develop this kind of swordsmanship, the third realm? Or the fourth realm? At this time, Marco, who flew into the sky, looked at the 3 sword marks on his chest burning with blue flames with lingering fear. After a while, he burst out laughing. It's useless, no matter how strong your attack is and how strange your sword skills are, you can't kill me. Roja did not pay attention to Marco, but quietly recalled the sword skill just now. Miji and Yanwei, the famous stunt of Sasaki Kojira in the world of Xingyu, reached the level of noble phantasm with swordsmanship. Slashing from the real world, then ignoring the concept of time and space and overlapping the two at the same time, resulting in a slash from 3 directions. Multi-dimensional twist phenomenon, that transcends multiple elements such as speed and skill. Roja has been coveting it for a long time before he started learning swords. When practicing swordsmanship, she even informed Arturia about the idea of this move, and it took a long deduction to develop this move, Secret Sword Yanwei Tsudo. From almost simultaneous 3 swords to slightly spaced 3 swords, from multi-dimensional twists and turns to high-speed continuous cuts. Even if this swordsmanship has been weakened so much by the 2 of them, it can still be regarded as a top swordsmanship in the world. And its first victory was to kill Marco once. The phoenix fruit is really powerful. Roja shook his head and smiled, but how does it feel to die once? Animal-type phantom beasts are rarer than natural-type fruits, and each of them is extremely powerful. In front of Marco's phoenix fruit, in addition to having the ability to transform into a phoenix, it also gave him an almost infinite resurrection ability. The near-infinite resurrection power is really powerful. Roja suddenly became interested. But I want to see if your resurrection is really unlimited. Roja raised his blade again. For example, kill you 100 times. Hearing this, Marco burst into laughter. If you can do it, you can try it. I see how many times you can use the trick just now. That's what it means. In an instant, the two rushed towards each other again. Boom, boom, boom. The explosion of the fight continued to sound on Sakar Island. Roja, who was concentrating on honing his swordsmanship, vowed to restore the proud Marco of the Whitebeard pirates. The fight between the two reached a fever pitch in almost an instant. During the battle, every time Marco was pierced by the blade and flew, he would come back after a while. In such a fierce battle, Roja's body gradually appeared some scars, but relying on the powerful recovery ability of Dragon Heart, it didn't take long to recover. In this way, the two have been fighting from late night to early morning, and from early morning until the sun sets, and the traces of the battle are all over the island. Woo! Roja took a deep breath and looked at Marco provocatively. Your resurrection time is getting longer and longer. How long can you last? 10 times? Or 20 times? At this time, Marco had already given up flying and fell from the sky. Hearing Roja's provocation, Marco felt bitter in his heart, but still stuck his neck and refused to admit defeat. You can try it and see if you can't stand it first, or I can't stand it. Although there is a lot of momentum in the words, everyone can hear that Marco already has a taste of stubbornness. 37 times. This is the number of times that Roja beheaded Marco in this day and one night. In addition, there are countless injuries such as beheading his hands and feet, and piercing his abdomen. At first, Marco could be resurrected instantly to recover from his injuries, but as the number of deaths increased, Marco's resurrection time became longer and longer. In the last serious injury, Marco flew into the sky, and it took a few minutes to completely heal the injury. Now, even the green flames on his body have dimmed, as if reaching the limit. Feeling about the same. Roja suddenly stretched his waist long and took the snow back into the sheath. What are you doing? On the contrary, Marco became vigilant. The last time Roja made such an abnormal move, he used that weird sword skill, and now he actually put the knife away, so Marco could not be vigilant. Don't be nervous, I think you're almost at your limit, and I'm almost done practicing swordsmanship, so it's time to go. Roja stood on the spot and stretched his muscles and bones, as if he had just finished exercising. Marco's mind was empty, and he was a little confused. Aren't they fighting an endless battle? How to say go away? Also, what happened to sword training? Suddenly, Marco froze for a moment, trying to recall the day and night of fighting. Seems the opponent's sword skills are indeed increasing. In an instant, a feeling of being insulted came to my heart. Marco has never encountered such a moment of contempt. You bastard, what do you think of me? Practice swords. I'll let you practice enough. The blue flames skyrocketed, and Marco galloped towards Roja. Do you still want to fight? Roja looked at Marco coldly. This time, he took out a pair of metal gloves from the storage space and put them on his fists. A punch hit Marco. Boom. The fists intersected, and at the moment of contact, Marco's pupils shrank, and a sense of powerlessness flooded his body. The next moment, Marco was kicked out by Roja like a baseball and rolled around. Roja was unforgiving, and rushed out again at a high speed, punching Marco with a punch. Asshole. Marco rolled on the ground twice, dodging Roja's attack, and as soon as he looked up, Roja's fist appeared in front of Marco again. Boom. The weird feeling of powerlessness reappeared, and Marco was punched into the ground. Roja grabbed Marco by the neck and picked him up. Are you still fighting now? You bastard. Marco wanted to struggle, but found that he couldn't get up his strength at all, and even the blue flames that had been all over his body were completely extinguished. At this time, he noticed Roja's gloves. "Helu stone!" Marco exclaimed and looked at Roja in disbelief. "You actually made the seafloor stone into a weapon." On the top of Roja's gloves are inlaid with fine stones one after another, which is the nemesis of the able, Helu stone. Looking at the shocked Marco, Roja smiled faintly. Of course, he knew the reason for Marco's horror. The hardness of Helu stone was comparable to that of diamonds. At the level of craftsmanship in this world, the difficulty of processing was as high as heaven. There are even rumors that the funds consumed by processing a Helu stone knife can even buy 10 warships. That's why Marco was so surprised. In this regard, Roja just wanted to say, "Sorry, Rich, you can really do whatever you want." Chapter 99 beat Marco. The debut of Helushi gloves made Roja quite satisfied. Since the beheading of Anilu, Roja knew that he would not be able to arm himself, so he started to collect Helu stones and create Helushi weapons. However, Helu stone is too difficult to collect and too difficult to build, so that Roja spent countless money to create a pair of gloves and a few shackles. It just came in handy today. With a flick of the arm, Marco was thrown to the ground, and Roja looked down at the embarrassed Marco. "Now, do you want to continue?" Marco was silent. He could not beat Roja in the first place, and now Roja has sacrificed such a big killer as the Helu stone weapon. His defeat is a foregone conclusion. "You want to kill or cut as you like, but you have to remember that Daddy won't let you go." Marco's mouth was bleeding, and in addition to despair, there was deep madness in his eyes. "Whitebeard." Roja smiled lightly. "Although Whitebeard is strong, it's still like that, and it's not enough to frighten me. But I'm not interested in killing you either." Roja sneered and turned to leave. "Try to become stronger. I hope you can make me interested when I see you next time. Remember, your life was given to you by me." Roja's figure gradually disappeared into the jungle. Behind him, Marco's face gradually twisted, and finally he slammed the ground and shouted in the direction Roja left. "You wait for me, I will definitely beat you." Marco's voice echoed in the jungle, and after a while, members of the Whitebeard pirates found him under the leadership of Doma. "Captain Marco." "Captain, are you all right? Where's that guy? Where did he go?" Someone hastily helped the weak Marco up. Doma, covered in bandages, came over with a solemn expression. "Losing. Well, I lost so badly." Marco looked unwilling. "But next time I will definitely win, and then I will return his words to him." Shuttle in the Chambord Islands, Roja rushed towards Shachi's bar. The reason why he didn't teleport to the bar was because he wanted to think about this action. The conflict with the Whitebeard pirates was a complete accident, but Roja didn't take it too seriously. As long as Marco and Doma are not killed, with Whitebeard's arrogance, he will not be angry at all, and will only be regarded as a dispute between the juniors. In other words, if you want to cooperate with Whitebeard in the future, there is still great hope. Wait. Roja frowned, suddenly stopped. He seems to have forgotten something. After thinking for a moment, Roja patted his forehead, his face a little speechless. "What's so special? The fight was so engrossing that I forgot about Absalom." Shaking his head, Roja moved on. Forget it. The current Absalom is still Mariah's subordinate, and it is easy to find. Now that Absalom is out, 10% of the robbery was planned by Moria, and this account will have to be retrieved sooner or later. After a while, Roja arrived at Shachi's bar, and as soon as the door was opened, Roja was stunned. Boom. Close the door at once. I must have opened it the wrong way. Opening the door again, Roja had a headache when he saw the scene in front of him. Estes, what are you doing? In the bar at this time, there are pirates lying in a mess, and Estes is shuttle in the center of the pirates. Is he taking some money from a pirate? Just when Roja saw this moment, Estes had already looted a handful of gold. You're back. Estes smiled when he saw Roja. He threw the gold in his hand to the bar and said to Shachi, my wine money. After that, he threw himself into Roja's arms. Looking at Estes in his arms, and at the wailing pirates, Roja was speechless for a while. What are you doing here? It's boring. Estes spread his shoulders. You won't let me go out and find something to do, so I can only have some fun in the bar. Roja. The speechless Roja no longer paid attention to Estes, but looked at Shachi. Is Rayleigh there? Yes. Shachi waved the pipe in her hand, lazily. He's in the backyard and has been waiting for you for a long time. Got it. Roja nodded and pulled Estes to the backyard. Hey, Roja, I have observed that old man in the past 2 days. He is really strong. When can I fight him? Estes looked at Roja expectantly. Hey, Roja sighed, a little helpless. Can we not want to fight first? When this auction is over, I will help you find a few opponents. They will definitely be strong. Let you fight enough. Quote. Okay. Estes became happy, and this time really suffocated her. As soon as he came to the backyard, Roja saw Rayleigh sitting in a chair. Yo, Uncle Rayleigh, stop crying. Rayleigh, who just wanted to say hello to Roja, immediately turned black when he heard this, and looked at Roja speechlessly. When you come up, you will be short. Did you say hello like this? Tell me, brat, what do you want from me? Rayleigh said angrily to Roja. When it comes to serious matters, Roja is not joking, and sits opposite Rayleigh with a serious face. Domineering, I need you to teach me how to use the tricolor domineering and all extensions. Domineering. Rayleigh looked at Roja curiously. The Dimension 5.4 Brigade still needs someone else to teach domineering. It's a long story. Roja shook his head with a wry smile. Although there are all kinds of cheats in the regiment, they have to be exchanged for contribution degree. With my contribution degree, at most one can be exchanged. Then, it's really not worth it. Contribution. Riley rubbed his chin and laughed secretly in his heart. This was the first time he had heard of the internal news of the Dimensional Brigade, and he told Shachi later that it would be possible to exchange a lot of money for wine. Okay, so when do we start? Now, Roja said without hesitation. In the battle with Marco, his desire to learn to be domineering and armed has deepened. Only by truly mastering the armament color can he be able to fight against the powerhouses from all walks of life. Chapter 100. The fourth update of the Sun Pirates. Time flies, and in a blink of an eye, it's time for the auction to start. 2 hours before the auction started, Roja took Estes to the outside of the human auction. At this time, the human auction house has changed from the deserted days of the past few days, with surging crowds and bustling people. From time to time, you can also see luxurious carriages approaching and parked in the designated area. On the periphery of the auction house, there are dozens of indifferently dressed men wearing various weapons constantly patrolling, their sharp eyes constantly scanning the crowd. Roja, who had long received news from Shadow, knew that these people were hired by Doflamingo from the Dark World to support the scene. The worst one had a bounty of more than 10 million. Very. Although it is said that these people are nothing more than a sword for Roja, for the pirates in the first half of the Great Route, such a lineup is already terrible. In addition, Roja has also seen a lot of people like him, who cover their faces with masks and wear heavy cloaks, and for these people, the people around them are not surprised. After all, this is a great route, where pirates are everywhere, whether it is to cover up money or to avoid enemies, you can live longer if you know how to hide your identity. Walking into the auction venue following the flow of people, Roja saw Baby 5 sitting on a chair next to the aisle and eating ice cream at a glance. Baby 5, long time no see. Roja walked in front of Baby 5 and reached out to rub her head. Who are you? Baby 5 vigilantly avoided Roja's hand, looking at a man and a woman with a mask and a cloak in front of her. With his hands empty, Roja froze for a moment. At this time, he remembered that he was still wearing a mask. He quietly lifted a piece of the mask and gave Baby 5 a look. Don't you remember? Ah, Luo. When Baby 5 looked happy, he was about to shout, but Roja covered his mouth immediately. Shish, I don't want anyone to know my identity, including Doflamingo, and even the conversation between you and me, I don't want them to know. Baby -5, can you help me with this? Please. Roha folded his hands and shook it. Please me. Baby 5 blushed and agreed without hesitation. Okay. It's so deceiving. I want to take it home. Even Esther's, who was on the side, looked at Baby 5 in surprise. He must have never seen such a talkative child. But after just one look, she turned her head away and lost interest. It's so good to talk, and there is no satisfaction in training. Roha didn't know the Queen of Shaking S beside him, and lost interest in Baby 5 in just a few seconds. At this time, he was racking his brains to ask for information from Baby 5. Baby 5, who is in your family today? Well, the young master is here, Buffalo is here, Diamante is here too. And Rauji, and more. Baby 5 raised her fingers and counted them one by one. Halfway through the count, she found that 5 fingers were not enough. She stretched her arms and drew a big circle. Everyone is here. Then, did Doflamingo get the real childlike fruit? Bring it. Then what plan does he have today? Seeing Baby 5 hesitating and wanting to say something, Roha rubbed her head again. Please, tell me. Ah, good. The young master is actually. Baby 5 blushed and said everything he wanted to. But at this moment, a big hand suddenly appeared and was pulled behind by Baby 5, and at the same time, a female voice came from in front of him. Sir, what are you doing? Looking up, a woman with a hairstyle like 2 fans on the left and right on her head appeared in front of Roha. Art fruit ability, Jorah. Immediately recalling the identity of the woman in front of her mind, Roha stood up casually. It's nothing, I just think this little girl is cute. Lowering his voice, pretending to be disturbed and unhappy, Roha patted his butt, got up and left. Jorah on the side looked at the 2 Roha who were leaving with some doubts, and suddenly asked the Baby 5 next to him. Baby 5, what did that person tell you just now? Don't say anything. Baby 5 smiled, lowered his head and ate ice cream. Since Brother Roha has asked her, she will never say it, unless someone else asks her again. Seeing what Baby 5 said, Jorah also dispelled her doubts. Jorah still trusts this little girl who has lived with them since she was very young. Even killing her would not believe that there would be someone who knew Baby 5's character better than them. Although he did not ask for more information from Baby 5, Roha was also very satisfied, at least knowing that all the Don Quixote family members were here. Randomly found a position near the corner, Roha pulled Estes and sat down. Sitting in a comfortable chair, Roha suddenly raised his brows, looked at the front seat, and saw Tezzolo in a pink suit and Baccara sitting next to him at a glance. Needless to say, Roha can also guess that Tezzolo is here for SSR Shanks this time. It's just that this guy not only got rid of the West Sea Mafia, but also reconciled with Doflamingo. Thinking of turning back and letting Shadow collect information on Tezzolo, Roha closed his eyes and waited quietly for the auction to start. Recently, he has been cultivating domineering day and night, which has really exhausted him. During the period, there were several exclamations from time to time in the auction house, as if some adult was present. Roha curiously looked at it a few times and then ignored it. What kind of president? What pirates with a reward of over 100 million, or some princes and nobles? These kinds of guys are no longer worthy of his attention. However, just as the auction was about to start, there was an extraordinary exclamation from the venue, as if everyone in the venue was boiling. Look, it's the Sun Pirates. Why are they here? Aren't they supposed to be in the New World? Why did they come here? Isn't it here to make trouble? I heard that among the slaves in this auction, there are many Murlocs. Maybe, be careful in a while. If the Sun Pirates fight with the guards, let's go quickly. If these guys make a move, it is estimated that the entire auction house will be demolished by them. The Sun Pirates. Roha opened his eyes curiously and saw 3 people walking from the door at a glance. The leader of the Sun Pirates, Fisher Tiger. Behind him are Shippen and Aladdin, the ship doctor of the Sun Pirates. Seeing Jinbei, Roha's expression couldn't help but get weird. Speaking of which, because of the One Piece comics, Tiger didn't die, the Sun Pirates didn't disband, and Jinbei didn't become Shichibukai. So up to now, the Chiwahai has not been gathered, and there is still one free. Would you like to play with the name of Shichibukai someday? Roha had a whim.